Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here. What did I say? Drive Thru right here on another spring day. Couldn't even get through the intro. The rest of the show, I'm sure, will be just wonderful. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and here he is, the man who doesn't watch the good matches, the man who chose not to watch the best match on the pay-per-view, the man who apparently tried to kidnap Rocka Khan's kids, Jim Cornette.
Yeah. That's what I've got to say to you today. What?
I forgot. Someone just put up the clip. I somehow forgot. I remember Petey Williams, that she was in the Scott Steiner math video.
Yes. She was standing back there when that happened.
How did I forget that important fact?
Well, because all the attention was on his mathematical capabilities, and he was doing his ciphering, and he's doing his multiplication tables and etc. And she was great wallpaper for that program, but nobody actually remembers anything she did herself. She was just in the periphery of things. So that's why she's come out now, and she was sneaking around in the back gathering information on us, spying on people so that she could amass this information for this lawsuit.
Your friendship and relationship with Michael Jordan, did this begin when you were working in the Carolinas?
No, actually, being from Kentucky, from Louisville here, it's always been a basketball crazy state for college basketball. And so, I went to a few camps. Me and Michael dribbled around a little bit, and we got this idea, hey, this goofy girl wrestler, it's going to work for this off-brand B-team company in 20 years. We ought to get together and kidnap her children.
20 years?
This was back in the 80s. See?
Okay.
It was a long time into planning this thing. Just getting anything through corporate at Home Depot takes forever, right? So imagine when me and Michael Jordan and The Rock, thankfully he signed off on that thing, when we sent the memo to Home Depot that we needed the duct tape and potentially a trunk or maybe a freezer of some kind to hide people in while we transported them in the white panel van with no windows and Missouri plates. That took a long time to go up the corporate ladder at Home. It went all the way to Mr. Depot himself before he finally signed off on it.
So what do you do when it's you and Michael Jordan and The Rock and you have this conspiracy? Do you go as far as you can before you go to corporate, or do you start by going to corporate and then knowing the parameters?
No, you got to have a good plan. You got to have a good plan. If you're going to kidnap children, hide them somewhere. That's yet to be determined.
Well, again, you're joking around just to throw it in there because people may be new to the show.
No, we're talking about an actual kidnapping plot involving me, Michael Jordan, The Rock, and Home Depot.
And Bank of America.
And several defunct entities. And I think Robert Blake should have been named also. He was heavily involved.
Panda Energy.
Well, but they're defunct. Dory didn't get named, Terry didn't get named, but several other defuncts got named.
Well, let's...
if you want to know the whole story, folks, go to official Jim Cornette on YouTube and just click on, what is it, Jim Cornette on being sued by Rocka Khan.
Jim Cornette on defunct.
On defunct. We give up defunct. All right, anyway, this is your program today where you alluded to earlier that you ranted and raved like a wild, crazy person the other day at me for no apparent good reason.
That's not true at all.
And I'll have you know I've not had a lot of sleep today. We had severe weather again this weekend. By the way, Sunday morning, very early in the morning, just as soon as it was getting daylight, we didn't even have really any severe weather warning necessarily come out, or nothing to write home about with what we've had lately. And a thunderstorm came through here at the castle for a little while, and it was windy and rainy. Come to find out, there were 4 tornadoes in the area that they were just spin-ups and nobody even put warnings out for, within like 15 miles in one direction and 12 miles in the other direction, over close to Hotchkiss. And so that happened. And then they were calling they said on the news that we might have severe weather last night, potentially. Not nothing, crazy or anything. Well, I usually leave the TV on in a bedroom with the sound down, but on a local channel if they're calling for any type of weather alerts, and that way, either when I roll over, if I hear thunder, whatever, I can keep an eyeball on a screen, and sure enough. About 3 whatever this morning, I hear a rumble of thunder, and I eyeball the screen, and they've got the weather radar up. And then I hear more thunder. I see the lightning coming through the window, and it's looking like there's a giant pink thing on the color radar. So I get my glasses, I get up, I go downstairs where I can turn up the volume and all that stuff. And apparently, just out of nowhere, like an RKO, a thunderstorm with damaging hail developed right across the Ohio River in southern Indiana, crossed over into Pleasure Ridge Park and Shively with fucking 2-inch diameter hail. It was like it was the whole area, and it was moving across the southern part of the county and went literally like 5 miles or less to the south of me. I'm looking out the window, and the rain and the wind, it's coming down, but you can hear a little bit of hail, like people throwing rock salt or whatever, but not golf ball size that they got in the other areas. So it went underneath me. But can you imagine that, being pelted from the sky with golf ball size pieces of ice falling from miles in the air? People are going to have to be buying roofs and shit. So I've been awake for a while. I don't have time for your foolishness.
Is this your excuse for not watching the match?
No, I watched the match after I didn't watch the match.
Is this your excuse for why you were in a bad mood? I'm assuming why you watched this match. I'm trying to figure out what the catch is going to be.
No, because I'm just saying, don't browbeat me and berate me like you did the other day, because I am not in the mood to Brooke, what did fucking I'm trying to remember what that fucking line was from.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I'm not in the mood to, it was an English wrestler. I can remember the interview. I'm not in the mood to brook your arrogance, sir. Who knows, it might have been a William Regal. But anyway, I'm not in the mood to put up with your shit, because the other day,
my shit, on
my own program, we were reviewing the big Backlash pay-per-view. And when I said the first match, the first thing that I saw when it was a 3-hour plus program is Bianca Belair and Iyo Sky, and I knew what the result was going to be, and I wasn't really interested in the issue, and I skipped it to get to the meat of the matter. And you had a conniption fit, as Mama Cornette used to say.
Can I add, you're leaving out important details left and right.
Well, you give them to me from the left, and then I'll give them to you from the right.
This was a match neither one of us was looking forward to seeing. This was a match that, on this show, or on one of these shows, you said that you probably weren't going to watch it, and I said I wouldn't blame you. That's why, after I watched this, because it was the opening match, and I wanted
and then you turned on me.
Well, no, you see,
agreed with me before.
I agreed with you. However, this is the important part. I watched it because it was the opening match, and after I saw it, I said, there's no way Jim could fast forward this. It's too good. I immediately emailed you, watch the match. You chose not to watch the match.
Because I told you that I'd already watched this show before I got your email. And then you went absolutely insane. You verbally abused me, browbeat me. You were a Doberman pinscher, and I was wearing milk bone underwear. And you said this was the greatest match it was the best match of the night.
I did say that, yes.
I found that impossible to believe, so just to prove you wrong, I did sit down, and I did watch the entire match, and I will have you know that you were right. So what I'm trying to find out now is why? Why was it the match of the night? Because you said, well, the crowd was the story, was a hot crowd. And I thought, well, yes, it was a hot crowd all night because it was a big show and they've been building this for a long time and they had all their, hometown heroes and local favorites and they were jam packed. But the crowd was specifically hot for this particular match. And not only that, but they booed Bianca Belair, the babyface, out of the building and decided that they were going to get with Iyo Sky. And it was to the point that it was off. It was even past the old territories type of, there wasn't the same level of heat like we believe everything we see and we want to kill you. But it was past the old territory, yay, boo. Every time Bianca Belair would draw a deep breath, the people would fucking hoot at her. And every time Iyo Sky just fucking flipped some sweat at Bianca Belair, it was like the babies went in the air. What have I missed? What was the Puerto Rican connection? Why did these people decide as it started? It seemed this wasn't like a gradual thing from the start. They were like, fuck you, Bianca, and let's go Iyo. What was going on that we missed that would cause that reaction?
It could be only one of two things. Either it's just a crowd that decided Iyo is their person that night for this match, or well, it could be other things, but perhaps something was said in that promo on SmackDown the night before that I don't remember a single thing about, but I saw it here in my notes.
How could she possibly have offended these? But what did she say? The goddamn Hurricane didn't do a good enough job. They ought to come back and finish it. What could you have said? It was like that there was videotape on the fucking Puerto Rico 6 o'clock news of Bianca Belair mistreating puppies and kittens. It was on purpose. It was like, I don't know.
It was the first time Bianca's ever had a reaction like that.
It's the first time again, we've seen the Canada-US thing with in some situations, whether it was with Bret Hart and Hart Foundation in the 90s or whatever, but there wasn't I heard the introductions. Neither Iyo nor Bianca is from San Juan. There was no hometown hero in this. And it was complete. And also the thing, it was a great match too. And I think part of it was obviously the people revved them up to do well, but they got a chance to work with each other in a way that Bianca has not worked with some of the other girls that I've seen when I watched her matches, because they're not capable of doing the shit that Iyo was doing. Iyo is a good worker.
Yeah.
Which also brings up, when they started, it was the good mat wrestling, tight stuff, good basics. That when they did the gymnastics, it didn't look hokey because the way that they set it up made sense. They were trying to outdo each other. You did a flip, well, I'll do a better flip. And it was like they meant it, rather than just the dueling cooperation of the aggressive parkour. And the facials on both girls, and the way that they made it look like a struggle. And even Iyo did the old Ricky Gibson handstand knee drop that I haven't seen in 40 years out of a baby face. She was a baby face for the night. But that's the thing, is that, again, if Bianca can wrestle like this and her basics are this strong, but most of the other girls don't have any at all, or they don't do this, she doesn't get to show them. And I will admit, again, that Iyo, I didn't believe. I would have never dreamed by looking at her that she could have a match like that. But therein lies the problem of how the water has been muddied. It's not being racist against Japanese women wrestlers to say that there's a lot of them that have given the good ones a bad name by either the AEW outlaw indie, not even indie girls from Japan being brought in and shoved down people's throat, and it's ridiculous. Or the presentation, in my opinion, in the WWE of old Asuka and whoever with the constipation promo and whatever the fuck. It's a little ridiculous. But if you took this girl, Iyo, and you put her in a tag team with another legitimately good female wrestler that was in contrast to her, had the size where Iyo doesn't have the height, and maybe had a rougher look or something or other, then you could have a top tag team because the girl can work. But as far as Iyo, then some people are going to say, well, why can't Iyo Sky be against Charlotte or Becky or whoever the fuck? Because Iyo Sky, I will compare in this instance to Bobby Eaton. So everybody knows that I'm not shitting on her. Because if I'm going to compare somebody to Bobby Eaton, it's in a good way. Bobby was in the best tag team in the world. And Bobby was a wrestler in the ring that even Ric Flair looked up to. But Bobby should have never been, and never was, the individual single world heavyweight champion. Because he didn't have the body and the promo to go with the immense in-ring talent. And that's why the tag team suit his strengths and somewhat hit his weaknesses with either a tag team or a manager. And that's the way that you use somebody who's an amazing worker, but isn't visually nor presentation-wise ever going to be a top single. So there you have that. The only bad thing that I did, if they hadn't had a match worked out, and if they were further along or in another system where they had been, because I'm pretty sure Bianca never trained with Rip Rogers, so she don't know how to call it in the ring. She came along much after OVW. If they could have changed the matchup that they had, because it didn't make sense when the people were so obviously behind Iyo, and I'm not saying Bianca should have started gouging eyeballs and pulling out foreign objects and working like the Sheik, but they could have changed things up before they got to where they needed to go and fed the people's interest a little better, don't you think?
Change it up in what way, though?
Well, I'd have to sit here and watch it with you.
Because to me,
go over everything, but every time, like the yay boo, the big yay boo that they had in the middle, right? Where they started out on their knees and the people were really with it. But Bianca won the exchange with a backbreaker. And instead of a big, hey, I got a big, oh. Little things like that. The nominal baby face for the evening could have come out on top of a few of those exchanges and gotten bigger pops from the people since they were doing it anyway. And it wouldn't have changed the result or even the concept of the match. They would just slowly switch it a little bit in midstream if they were calling it on the fly, where, well, remember Michaels did that with who? Or no, it was Rock and, no, Michaels oversold for Hogan. It was Rock and Hogan in Toronto. They changed their shit up a little bit. And the way that each person reacted, Iyo could have milked people a little bit more. Bianca could have got a few more, oh shit, what the fuck's happening looks on her face, and just changed the dynamic of the match. But they did the same match they had worked out, because they all work out matches now. Even with Bianca visually, facially acknowledged that people were shitting on her, but, there wasn't any change of the match.
I think Bianca does an excellent job of making, she did it maybe better than ever before here, of making a match look like an athletic competition that she's struggling in. This is the first time that I can remember, if I've seen it before, I just don't remember it off the top of my head, where her long ponytail got messed up a little bit. It wasn't so neat. It looked like someone had been in a fight. You know what I mean? Like it was strands of it that were kind of loose.
Yeah, it was like, shit. Well, and that was they really struggled, and they had nice false finishes going in, and then they did the multiple back and forth. And when Iyo did the moonsault off the top to the floor, again, I have to call it because I call it on other people, including Hangnail Page. She didn't look to make sure the girl was back there. But at least she rolled her in and tried to beat her after that. And right there, it had been such a good match. I wrote, I get the feeling that they should go now. And son of a gun, that's where they started apparently going into their sequence because remember Bianca, Iyo tried to Hurricane Rana Bianca off the top, and Bianca caught her.
That was great.
And there was a sit-up and tried to do a sit-up, and boom, and finally she hits the power bomb. Big pop on a huge, or a big pop rather on a 2 count. And then I wrote, okay, they have to be going. And then here came Bayley and Dakota Kai. And at that point, when they had the tug of war with the hair, that's one of the places that probably got messed up. And Bianca picked Sky up in the fireman's carry for her finish. She nails Kai off the apron with her feet. And then Iyo rolled her up for a 2 count. As soon as they come up, Bianca pulls Bayley in. And did you see? It just grabbed her and it looks like she was trying to throw her out of the ring for a shoot, but like she didn't know how. And Bayley's like, where are you trying to fucking put me?
That was a little awkward.
She threw her out, I think, under the bottom rope. I was like, what the fuck? But she goes back to Iyo, and that's where Dakota Kyle nails Bianca in the head with a kick, and then Iyo misses a moonsault, and Bianca hits her finish 1, 2, 3. So they went the back and forth stuff, but it was set up to be a heel fuck finish. The people, again, were not necessarily popping on the right things because I think they wanted Bayley and Dakota Kai to succeed in their malicious endeavors. But then finally, after the thing was over with, they cheered everybody because it was such a good match. But you could tell they would have preferred to see an upset there. But yeah, not only was the crowd hot for wrestling and for the show being there, but the crowd was hot for this match, and they did a wonderful job in it. So hold on, wait a minute. Where's my ding-a-ling? Whoops.
That's your ding-a-ling?
That's my ding-a-ling.
Short and to the point?
Yeah. I think my battery's running down there. Why you got my battery run down so low there, Ron?
I hope you can get some batteries for your ding-a-ling. Excellent match. Bianca, I've been saying it to you since NXT. You know, Rhea is one of my very favorites, and Rhea is, you know, it's so early in her career, but I think maybe the best we've ever seen. I mean, we'll see how things work out. She's just so good right now. Bianca's not that far off. Now, the booking and who she works with, maybe that's part of why you don't see her the same way, but she's had big matches that you've loved.
Well, I think, well, just hold on a second. I think part of it is she's always so happy and smiling and skippy and twirling and smiling. And the promos, in many cases, she's trying to do the catty remarks that they script for everybody. I know catty, whether men or women. It's juvenile type insults and banter back and forth with the people they're supposed to be mad at. I think Ripley has the advantage because she's got that look and she can just say, you know, fuck you. And Charlotte has somewhat of the arrogance that she has, you know, but I don't like the fucking happy, skippy, peppy girls that are just trying to be snotty with each other. It's
But you know what? Look at it this way. Rhea Ripley, from everything I know about her, I believe was a fan as a kid who at a very young age became a wrestler, and she at this point has excelled at what she does. Very similar to MJF, I guess, in a lot of ways. I believe Bianca was an actual athlete who WWE scouted and signed.
Yes, she went to University of Tennessee.
So the idea that, well, I guess, so my point is, I think she is probably as good as you could be right now, considering all she knows from pro wrestling is, here's your script. Here are your
Yeah.
lines. Here's what you're supposed to do. She's got the matches down. You know, you can work with the other stuff if you can get the matches down. She can wrestle, and she can make it look like a real fight. And her matches are really good. But again, she came up through that system. So, as opposed to some of
you're probably right in that she's never. But hopefully somebody has. Well, but what old tapes do they tell the girls to watch? I was going to say she's never been in any other system and she's never seen wrestling presented as wrestling rather than sports entertainment. I agree with that. I acquiesce to that. What tapes, I wonder, do they tell the girls to watch from the territory days? Because there were no girls in the territory days. But at the same time, how do you understand the real wrestling business and the passion and emotion and believability aspect unless you watch the territories?
And who's there that's going to make the proper recommendations? I mean, there's a lot of questions you could ask about that.
Well, no, there's a bunch of ex-in-ring guys that I'm sure they watch 80s guys. So if they're showing, that's a good, maybe somebody that's been in the program or one of our little birds that twinkles in our ears from time to time can tell us, hey, oh, Jesus, can't hear now. My tinnitus is setting in. Maybe they can tell us what from the 80s they have the girls in NXT watching that would be the equivalent of what the guys watch in terms of the 80s tag teams in the WWF or the 80s NWA or Flair or Hogan or Piper, whoever the fuck. Because if they're just showing them All Japan women, and that may be great athletically, but that doesn't teach you anything about working, having an American style match, doing promos. Do the girls watch the guys from the territories, or do they just not?
I don't know. And then with Iyo, I think Iyo's really talented. I liked her in NXT. This is obviously the best thing I've ever seen her in. This was fantastic. And for all the matches you and I sit through, on AEW specifically, but on Raw and SmackDown, the women's matches with silent crowds. It's crazy when you see it like this.
Yeah.
Just crazy. And I understand your point of view. I don't necessarily agree.
The only reason I would want that crowd in Puerto Rico to sit on their hands is if they had knives in them. They were fucking hot.
But when it comes to Iyo, I understand where you come from. I don't completely agree with, because AEW specifically, I mean, beyond the Asuka promos, but AEW has kind of wheeled out from the very beginning of their promotion.
It's just been ridiculous.
I mean, the first two people you were exposed to were Riho, who's dressed like a tiny princess, and Emi Sakura, who thought she was Freddie Mercury.
With a mustache. Just to remind everybody, it's been a couple of years now. She came to the ring with a mic stand in a Freddie Mercury outfit with a mustache.
But I guess the thing I would stress to you is that it's not Japanese specific. Because
no, it's what is being portrayed to our American audience as what Japanese wrestlers they think are, or they want them to believe, or whatever the fuck. And as a result, that's why I see everybody rolling their eyes every time I see one. If these people in Des Moines or in Colorado have not spent, their formative years watching All Japan women tapes, and to know that there's a difference. So again, it's what you are taught and led to believe that if every time if you drove 500 miles down the interstate, and every time you stopped to get something to eat, and you went to a burger place, whether it be Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, Five Guys, on and on, every single one of them was a shits, then how many more times would you want to go to a burger place, or would you just turn up your nose at all the burgers?
Probably.
Well, there you go.
But I guess that's my point. If you really look at it, it's beyond just the Japanese women. It's every woman who debuts on wrestling. There are very few who debut and look like fully formed wrestlers. I don't even mean like size-wise, just like not like a little princess or something, or wearing a mustache to the ring, things like that. but there are more goofy. See, I think the problem is, and what makes Rhea and Bianca stand out, to take it beyond just the Japanese women in wrestling domestically, is that there are certain people that stand out, like they treat it the way you want to see it treated. You believe in them. It's not like I watched wrestling. I watched the Bellas, and I always wanted to do something like that. And now I have this character, and I bop to the ring. There's too much of that.
And they're concentrating more on what they're wearing and how they look in the pre-tape and delivering their scripted verbiage in an overly dramatically, obviously acting-ish way than actually being who they're supposed to be and working on their in-ring and being wrestlers instead of budding reality TV stars.
Like, can you think of anyone in AEW? I mean, maybe Hayter, and I'm only judging that based on what I've seen of her wrestling people in AEW.
We haven't seen much of her at all lately. Is she hurt too?
What, big babyface turn to give her the belt? Now she's like still second fiddle to Britt. I don't understand how this happened. But
that's right. She's still the champion, one of the champions.
The match that Iyo and Bianca had, could you actually see anyone on the AEW roster having that kind of match?
No, not
the AEW women's roster, obviously.
No, you didn't need to really narrow that. If you take Danielson out and maybe, FTR's on vacation, then it still works.
All right, so you rank it high. I guess I'll wrap this up.
I rank that shit high. I put that shit on everything.
All right, well, that was the positive review, surprisingly, I'm surprised, of Iyo Sky versus Bianca Belair at Backlash in San Juan. The next night, Jim, a dark night for professional wrestling. And after this, we'll get questions, but let's talk about yet another WWE Raw.
Well, and it won't, I say this a lot, but in this case, I really mean it. It won't take long. We're just going to talk about the meat of the matter. And boy, now, what a difference a couple 100 miles makes. Well, I guess they were all the way up in Jacksonville, so I guess that was 400 miles probably, but they go from San Juan to Jacksonville, Florida, and the people were polite, but after seeing again, an old time looking wrestling arena full of people like they used to be, instead of the arena lit up and half the thing taken up by a giant stage and game show set, we come back to reality. This was Raw for May the 9th, honestly. Or no, May the 8th. I'm sorry. The day after Backlash. I said that. I caught myself. You know it all. Don't start on me again.
Again? Will you stop?
Again, like you did on the other program here. Anyway, they opened up with Cody, and Cody obviously is the story here, and the story's going to get even more complicated. But they showed the highlights of the match with Brock in black and white when Brock was covered in blood. And by the way, did you see that it has been reported that it was intentional where Brock headbutted the turnbuckle?
Is that so? I mean, how hard is that to do? Let me just stop you. The idea that I'm absolutely going to get hard way. You can never really predict how much blood you're going to get or if it's going to work, right?
Well, no, but here's the thing. He had scouted it out, and if you go back and look, when the buckle or when the pad comes off the buckle, there is a screw that you can see without, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this without a visual illustration here, but there's a screw that goes through there. You saw that there was a screw on the top, and you had to figure, because it wasn't just blunt, there was an edge. So you had to figure that if he hit it hard enough with his forehead, that it was probably going to get some color some way, because the forehead, if you hit a sharp object, since that's where your bone is, it's going to cut it because there's not that much room for the flesh to move around. Whereas on your cheek, there's a lot of room for the flesh to move around, which is why that when you get busted open hard way in the cheekbone cuts from the inside out, because the cheekbone, feel under your eye, cheekbone is sharp, but the skin moves around all over the place, right?
Right.
So when you get hit there, and I speak from experience, 21 stitches from Bill Dundee one night in Memphis. The doctor said, yeah, your cheekbone cut from the inside out. So I'd put, I think, 8 underneath and 13 on top or whatever. But if you go at it, the worst thing you're going to do is you're going to gouge yourself open in your forehead from that fucking edge of that screw. It's not something that I'd particularly want to do. Maybe, of course, now, since it's Brock and he's getting maybe $1.5 million for that match, I might headbutt a goddamn screw on the wall for $1.5 million.
That seems like a Brock thing, though. Like, do you want to get color? Yeah. No, I'm going to do it the real way.
Well, yeah, but hold on, I'll address that. But the only thing is, I think, if anything, he might have wanted to do it farther up high because it was disturbingly in between his right up above his nose, in between his eyes. And I think he probably would have preferred to do it a couple inches farther up, but if he was going to do it on purpose. But nevertheless, the stupid thing is that they're not using the blade. They banned the blade, and they want to be able to tell their sponsors that no, this is not self-inflicted, self-mutilation or whatever they fucking call it. So now they've got guys who say, fuck it, I'll just headbutt the fucking ring post or the fucking buckle or the stairs or whatever. God damn it. Just fucking use the blade and tell him you didn't. Brett used to do it. It worked with Vince. It ought to work with Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, for fuck's sake. Jesus Christ. Anyway,
good hard way from Brock.
Good hard way. Yet I tell you what, the old timers would have been proud. As Sputnik Monroe or Ron Wright.
That is like a chisel. That it basically is like running into the chisel.
Well, no, because the chisel was more controlled than this.
That's true.
Because it was but now we got to tell everybody what the chisel is. If you just joined us, folks, Ron Wright in East Tennessee in the old days, make sure the people believed his shit, went to a metal worker and had a set of knuckles fabricated with the sharpened edge of a chisel on a flat piece of metal that he could then tape up and look like the knucks you use in a ring. And when he popped you with it, you didn't need to worry about using a blade. You got juice. But that was still, it was a very sharp surface, but a controlled depth. He had he only had the edge of it attached to the metal, but then he had taped it so it couldn't go in too far, right? And he was hitting you in a specific place with it rather than you just launching yourself head first and can't really see because you're going 100 miles an hour and hoping for the best. So the chisel was more controlled than this. And remember a while back when Brock and Orton and Brock elbowed Orton and opened him up by gentleman's agreement beforehand.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And Jericho went crazy because he didn't know about it being arranged.
Yeah, and almost fought Brock when it probably wouldn't have got fucking... Brock was, I'm sure, so surprised, like, you fucking idiot. You think I did this on purpose? That he didn't fucking do anything till it was explained. Then, I think, didn't Brock headbutt the ring post here a few years ago?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that was a Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer thing to do also, which explains a lot about him because he didn't just do it for $1 million once in a while. He did it nightly on fucking spot shows. But anyway, the point is, we have decided that we would now not only tell everybody how that the blood is done, but even when people are good enough to do it without anybody seeing it or knowing how it was done, then they still feel they have to admit it. So it's better to just bash our own heads into fucking sharp metal shit or hit each other real hard. You fucking morons. Tell goddamn your local sponsor that Oh gosh, it was an accident. It ain't ballet. Shit happens. Beautiful, stylish flooring. There's a place here in Louisville that has a TV commercial called River City Flooring. Here is their entire jingle. River City Flooring, it's River City Flooring. Beautiful, stylish flooring.
How much do you think they paid for that?
Too much. So, are we going back to Raw now?
We were talking about Cody's promo. I don't even think we started talking about it.
Well, because they showed the Brock highlights in black and white, and it got me off on a tangent. And Jacksonville, Florida loves him some Cody Rhodes. And, of course, he talked about beating Brock at Backlash, and what's next is the World Heavyweight title. And he left the ring and went up to the belt on the stage, and he fired the people up, and he convinced him he's going to do his best to win this thing, and he said, let the tournament begin. And in here comes the music of Seth Franklin Rollins, and they do their face-to-face. And then Franklin danced to the ring for our first triple threat match. And this one...
If I could stop you, the Cody promo,
Yes.
What did you think of it? And first of all, what did you think of the reaction in Jacksonville?
Well, I thought you were rushing me. I thought you were rushing me through it.
No, not at all.
Well, again, he's got the people listening to him. And it's Florida, I know, in the Rhodes family, but still, that's been a long time. His promo's good on its own. And he's got I've said it before, I said it in AEW. It just comes off so much better here for all the reasons we've talked about, the difference in presentation and etc. He doesn't have Dusty's voice, but he's got Dusty's, I hear Dusty. If Dusty used big words more clearly, I hear Dusty. Whether it's the inflection or just the way he goes about it, I don't know what. But no, it was, again, you would be convinced that now this guy, he's past Brock Lesnar, he's beaten him, and he's going on to bigger and better things.
See, I had a sneaky suspicion something was going to happen because of all of a sudden in the promo when he said, I forget the way he phrased it, but tonight I'm going to, finally be on the road to capturing the world title. He was indicating that the new belt was his goal. I don't know. I mean, I kind of think you can't say I'm going to win the belt for my daddy and then you didn't win it. It's like, well, now I'm going to win this belt for my daddy.
Well, but I'm pretty sure they probably made him say that this world title is his goal. They don't want... If I was Cody, I would have wanted to reference. I would have wanted to be interviewed by Baba Wawa. I would have wanted to reference Roman Reigns. See, wanted to reference Roman Reigns is not a thing you can just do at the top of your game there. Anyway, I would have wanted to say something about Roman if I was Cody, but he didn't, and I think that's probably because they're thinking don't bring that up because people are kind of pissed already. But again, as we will see, they're going to love the chase. We hope.
We'll see.
But the triple threat match that was on first was Seth and Priest and Shaky. And from the two matches that were given, you would think that it would be Cody and Seth again in the, winners match later on for the main event. However, this match, the triple threat, 23 minutes into the show, by the way, before they rang the bell for this thing, for the first match. And I will say again, Priest really is looking great physically. I think he's even dropped some weight. He's elevated himself recently in terms of not only his work, but his promos. He's got the size. He has a grown adult male voice, Of course, as soon as they opened up at 100 miles an hour, he took a knee in the back and went to the floor and wasn't seen again for like a minute because they have to. That was the thing. And they went to the break in 2 minutes, by the way.
Well, that's every triple threat match, isn't it?
Well,
you have to go disappear for a while.
That's every match, and every match they go to the break in 2 minutes, and every triple threat match you have to disappear, and that's the thing. There was nothing about, I think shaky, honestly. I think his offense is shaky. The kicks, it looks awkward. I'm not getting him. I just don't see it.
Nakamura, you're referring to.
Nakamura, old shaky Nakamura. But you can't really summarize this match. There were two baby faces and one heel, so they didn't even have that going for them, that it could be a one baby face fighting against the odds, and it was guys doing moves to each other nonstop. And then finally, Nakamura got the ankle lock on Priest, but Seth splashed Nakamura off the top rope, and then shit canned Priest, but then had to pull Shaky up for the pedigree. He just hit him with a splash off the top, looked like he came 20 feet in the air, and that couldn't be the finish. He pulled him up, then he hit him with a pedigree, and then he beat him. So they actually got an 8-minute uninterrupted segment to have a match, but it was a 3-way match, but it was moves. And then Seth won, as we kind of figured in this instance would happen. Wasn't anything wrong with it. It was, it was just there.
I agree. I mean, it was fine for what it was. I'm not a big 3-way match fan, as I've talked about in the past. I did have the moment watching this where I thought, it would be an interesting swerve. I hate to use that word, but swerve on everyone's expectations to have Damian Priest win. Something to get him over the Bad Bunny loss the night before.
Yeah.
But obviously, Seth right now, there is a moment. I don't like it. But fans love singing his song while he stands in the shadows. Or in the spotlight, I guess, while they're in the shadows. So they're going to...
Or the other way, have you seen your mother, baby, standing in the shadows?
One of the more underrated Rolling Stones songs, if I say so myself, but...
Thank you.
Well, you didn't write it. What do you mean, thank you?
Hey, I'll get a credit on it because I'm re-releasing it on Feather Bottom Records.
Someone get Andrew Loog Oldham on the phone. I got a complaint, but... Okay, for what it was.
I've got Saul Zantz's lawyer on speed dial, so.
Well, Zantz can't dance, but
he'll steal your money.
We're going to out-reference each other all show. I can see it already. All right, for what it was, and like you said, everyone at this point figured you were going to get the main event of Seth Rollins versus Cody. It'll probably be a really good match, but that was what you were expecting at this point.
But now for what we didn't expect. Because the next triple threat match was Cody Rhodes versus Finn Balor versus The Miz. And can you explain why The Miz is in a 6-man competition here for a shot at the world title when he has been beaten by every man, woman, and child, animal, vegetable, mineral, scrub woman, Jiffy Lube attendee? Has he won a match that we've seen in months? Everybody beats him up and quickly, right?
I can't remember the last match he's won, but more importantly, I feel like the last several times at least that we've seen him on TV, he's not been wrestling. He's just been treated like a goof, one segment after another.
So, but he's in it. Well, I get because they like seeing him get beat up.
Well, you know what? Also, if you're trying to fool people watching the match into thinking they know what the result will be, watching that match, you think you know who's going to lose. It's going to be The Miz. No one thinks Cody's not going to win. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
Well, nevertheless, I was wondering here, there are two heels. You got Miz, you got Balor, so at least Cody, and obviously I think Cody probably had some feedback in this, because why would he want to be a baby face in there fighting another baby face? So this was presented better, and even though it started at 100 miles an hour and they went to break in under 2 minutes, it was Cody looking good against two heels and staying strong. And after the break, they came back. It was the top of the 9 o'clock hour. This is what they wanted everybody to see. And Cody, again, looking good against both. He hit a double Cody cutter. He was making the most of this. It still wasn't going to be a match that he could sell and get a ton of sympathy and blah, 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 and have peaks and valleys. So it made sense that he would again look like he's kicking a shit for the most part out of two heels. But there were lots of false finishes and the save and then the dumping the third guy to the floor. But everybody's work was fine. And then finally, Cody hit the crossroads on Balor and Miz saved it. So Cody grabbed Miz and hit 3 in a row on Miz. So you knew he was doomed and covered him. And there is Brock. How did they get that big motherfucker to the ring in the arena without people popping and screaming and yelling, seeing him, because he was there at ringside when moments before he had not been there.
Did he come up from under the ring?
I don't know, because they didn't shoot it. I'm thinking maybe they run him out the side and bring him in the audio area there, right to the, but still you would think that people would see something happening, but you didn't hear a peep until suddenly, as Cody covers Miz, Brock is on the floor and pulls him out by the leg and hits an F5 on him on the floor. And again, because of it's a triple threat, no DQ, lazy booking, the referee has to just stand there and look at it. And that's the only thing about this angle I didn't like, but I'll continue on with what happened. He pulls Cody out. He hits the F5 on the floor. He's got a black eye and the big gash on his head where you can see this. He's got stitches. And as he's standing over Cody, Finn Balor hits the double stomp on Miz and covers him 1, 2, 3 and wins the match. And then Brock grabs Cody again and F5s him through the announce desk. And everybody in the match is gone, and etc. That's all over now. And Brock grabs the microphone and asks Cody, "What do you want to talk about?" "I want to talk about me." And he grabs him and cuts a fucking promo over him, looking like an insane person with that bashed in face, while Cody's laying there selling, and challenges him to a fight at the Night of Champions on May 27th. And I love the angle, except for they didn't even need for the referee to see it. When you think about this, what had just happened? Cody fucking hits the Balor with the crossroads, right? And then he grabs Miz and he hits crossroads and crossroads and crossroads. As soon as he grabbed the Miz, if fucking Balor had started to stagger up and just fell backwards through the ropes and tied his fucking foot in the rope, where the referee is, oh my God, the man's stuck upside down. He's trying to loosen the fucking foot. Right at their last third crossroads, Brock could have pulled him out, give him the F5, and fucking the referee turn around after he's freed Balor and see Miz laying there. Cody's on the floor. He don't know what happened, and you get a fucking finish at without the referee having to look and then still count the pin for the heels win. Again, did I just have it drummed into me by so many smart people like Bill Watts and Jerry Jarrett and Bill Dundee and Dusty Rhodes or whatever? Don't put all your heel heat on the referee.
I mean, you're right. I mean, they do a lot of things that aren't right. But I mean, I don't think most people don't even know who the referees are.
Well, that's all right. But nevertheless, so Brock has taken Cody out of the World Heavyweight Championship tournament and has challenged him to a fight, and now they've stolen the belt from Cody that his daddy never knew was going to exist in the Garden.
What do you think of that? Are they gonna? I mean, they already stopped the inevitable with WrestleMania. At least what we all thought was inevitable. The question became, okay, how are you going to not lose all the momentum with Cody between now and whenever he wins the belt? They go right into the Brock thing. Then after that starts, they announce the new championship. Now they screw Cody out of that. Remind everyone, just in case anyone forgot, he also can't challenge for the AEW championship.
Oh, well, I don't think that's going to...
No, but I mean,
on the horizon.
But I guess that's the point. Dusty Rhodes, very successful with frequently chasing the belt that he won 3 times. Cody Rhodes was chasing one belt, got denied. Just began a new chase, got denied. How long can you propel this? Could it be he gets through Brock and then gets another chance and Brock costs him again, and then he gets another chance and someone else? How much can you keep doing this?
Well, it's yet to be determined. But now in this one, I'm not that upset about it, because remember we said, well, it's going to make him look like shit if he gets the consolation belt And I think Cody's smart enough to know that too, which is probably why that he may have said, I don't want it. If they were ever going to give it to him, if I was ever in the plan, he probably said, I don't want it. But I'm pretty sure they already had this general roadmap laid out. He's beaten Brock Lesnar, but he beat him. Remember, we said wasn't like it was an overwhelming, dominant victory. He rolled him up when he was in the fucking soup. So, yes, he got by Brock. He had to beat Brock, but it's not really settled. Now, Brock has cost him this shot at this title, but here's the thing. In this next match, one of two things will happen. Either Cody will get a more dominant victory, or Brock will fuck him some kind of way. And I'm hopefully not going out on a ledge to predict that if Brock fucks him, they're going to have a third match sometime that they've already agreed to, provided nobody gets hit by a truck between now and the time it happens. If Cody wins the next one more dominantly, then that means that he's not going to wrestle Brock again, but he has to have that victory to maintain his momentum. They can't go 1-1. Like, for instance, who was it in the rivalries they just did? Was it Rock and Cena? They determined 1-1 one year and they brought it back next year. And
Rock Cena, yeah.
Okay, that worked, a 1-1, so you never really determined who was the better one, but the guy that was more regular won the second one. In this case, if they were going to do two matches between Cody and Brock would have, only two, I should say, Brock would have to win the first one, Cody the second one, if they weren't going to go for a third. But Brock couldn't win the first one because then that means Cody would be doing a job for Reigns and then doing a job for Brock. So they couldn't really do that the exact same way. So I predict either Cody beats him 2 in a row, or if they're going to have a third match on down the line, then Brock will fuck him some kind of way, and then he'll have to come back and get that dominant victory. But they can't, to answer your other question, they can't do that too much or with almost anybody else because, which is probably why they're doing it with Brock. You can get a pass by getting beat by Brock Lesnar, right? But almost nobody else, because everybody else the people view as human and one of the boys, not special.
You're right. But I guess my fear is that we're going to prolong Cody winning the belt so long that it's not going to mean what it could mean.
Now, I didn't say they wouldn't do that.
And WrestleMania was clearly the night. And even, look at the reaction he got in Jacksonville. He definitely seemed like he got a bigger reaction than everyone else. I almost think it would have been more effective if he beat Brock. Brock chalked it up to, okay, you got me. I'm going to get you again one day and just move on. I don't want him to get stuck in a thing with Brock. We'll see. Maybe it'll end up being really good.
Well, but see, the thing is, they need him stuck in a thing with Brock because they've got so few main event guys that are really main event guys. It's Cody, it's Brock, it's Reigns, it's... Help me.
That's my other question where I was going next, and I apologize if you hear Swami. FedEx is here. But if Rollins is going to be one of the guys in the match after this night here, and we see who's in the three-way matches on SmackDown, the problem is Roman Reigns feels like a world champion because he is. Cody Rhodes, right now, feels like a world champion because he likely should be. You mean to tell me that about Rollins or anyone else, whoever's going to win this title? That's the problem, too. If you don't put it on Cody, you're putting it on someone who probably shouldn't be a world champion.
Well, but I have a feeling that their overall goal is to probably have this secondary title. The reason why, they don't think it's secondary, but it'll be secondary. And the reason why Cody's not in it anymore is because they don't want to put it on him, and he doesn't want it because at some point, and it may be all the way till next year's WrestleMania, and boy, that might be stretching things, Cody's going to be the one to beat Roman Reigns, or they're just wasting their fucking time. So however they think they can stretch this rubber band to get to that point. I wish them good luck, but there's not a big talent roster to put in the middle of Cody and Reigns to keep people busy that long.
Well, you know, on the topic of Cody Rhodes, he is someone who frequently seems like he has the world by the strings, but somehow things constantly go wrong. That's a lot to deal with. Maybe he needs someone to talk to.
Well, you know, as a matter of fact, that's why I think that he starts every interview that he does with, what do you guys want to talk about? Because he has been in the past involved with the folks that we love at BetterHelp.
Well, we can't say that. We could say that we think it would be.
It because it's all about talking. It's all about talking at BetterHelp. Of course, they're one of the sponsors of our program. They sponsor many of our programs, and it's with them, it's all about talking things over. And that's why he says, what do you want to talk about? Because he learned that from the fine licensed therapists that are awaiting you at BetterHelp.
We don't know that. Let's just state for the record, there are therapists waiting for you, but we don't know that Cody Rhodes has ever used them, and certainly not that he stole his catchphrase.
Well, it just seems funny, is all I'm saying. It's very coincidental to me, because BetterHelp is all about talking things through. And folks, as they will tell you themselves at BetterHelp, therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding. Sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. And that's why that BetterHelp will connect you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that, as they say, journey of self-discovery, which sounds more attractive than a journey to the center of the earth. And again, folks, if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, by the way. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible. They can work around your schedule, day, night, early morning. Who wants to talk early in the morning to anybody? I don't know. But nevertheless, if it's up to you, they'll do anything. All you got to do is go to BetterHelp, HELP.com, and fill out a brief questionnaire. You're going to get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch anytime. Therapist, that is, for no additional charge until you find the one that's right for you, and talk some things over and get someone else's viewpoint on the things that may be bothering you or keeping you from achieving your full potential. And if you go to betterhelp.com/JCE right now, as in today, put the show on pause, come back to it later, and go to betterhelp.com/JCE, you're going to get 10% off your first month's services. Again, betterhelp.com/JCE, 10% off your first month's services. And not in a joking manner, we tend to be frivolous at times, but we have gotten numerous emails from many of the Cult of Cornette listeners that say they gave it a try and it helped them in their situation. Maybe it'll help in yours.
BetterHelp.
I don't think it'll help in yours.
Hey.
Can we get back to Raw now? The people are waiting with bated breath to find out who's going to win this thing now.
Hey, what was up with Brock's mic? Did you pick up on that? We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. He demanded a microphone and somebody handed him one so he could talk to Cody. And at first, either it wasn't on, I think maybe it wasn't on at all, but he was yelling loud enough that the microphones on the floor camera were picking him up. But then they turned it on to program, but I'm not sure it was on the PA in the building because it didn't have that full sound. But I think everybody was scared to tell him. So I don't know whether he got the point across. It was heard, but it looked more unplanned that way. So what the fuck?
Hey, one other thing I'll say, because when Brock had a mic that either didn't work or wasn't turned on, and he was talking into it and yelling into it, what do you want to talk about, Cody? Brock said it. It references what Cody says. But if you notice, when Cody says it, that's the one thing that doesn't get a reaction. Didn't get any reaction in Jacksonville, which I thought was very interesting. Because he was over.
Yeah.
And they reacted to him. They didn't react to him saying that line in the promo. Because also, how do you answer it? So, it's not like, yelling what back at Steve Austin or anything. So what do you want to talk about? And then you're supposed to yell topics at him? What do you do?
The high price of food.
Inflation.
I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, nevertheless, he wanted to talk to Cody, and he did. But you know who didn't want to talk to Marcel Marceau and Kaiser Wilhelm on this program was Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So Gunther's Imperium cohorts, their henchmen, as Owens called them, and rightfully so, his henchmen, they've just come to Raw, right? They just got drafted over. They're a brand new tag team on the show. They come up and have a backstage interaction where they put Owens and Zayn on notice that they're coming. They're getting Gunther's going to be here next week, and we're here now. And Owens and Zayn says, well, we'll deal with you. Unlike the bloodline that took months, we'll deal with you tonight. And the next thing that they did after the Brock angle was they had a match. And guess what? Owens and Zayn dealt with them tonight. In about 5 minutes of match that was actually on the air, they just beat them flat in their first match on the show. You see what I'm talking about? That's why you don't take the henchmen in any of these groups seriously, because they're flunkies.
First of all, they went up to him backstage. I mean, Zayn was on SmackDown. Was Owens on SmackDown too? I mean, every now and then he was. It's not like these guys have never seen each other before.
Yeah.
So now they're having a brand new interaction on a brand new show, I guess. There's too much of this still. Forget about like two guys having a conversation like the Bloodline do with the camera in front of them. I'm talking about like two guys are there and someone's right off camera and they just walk up to them and have like this weird child. Like it happened at least twice on this show because the Xavier Woods thing later on. But enough of that. And yeah, Imperium, Gunther is treated as serious as you can treat someone, I guess, to complete that sentence.
Yes. Yes, it'd be nice if you spoke in full sentences, but I agree with you.
But they're not. They're the exact opposite. Even though tall one gets mic time, they're treated like this. First night in, first night on Raw. Next week's Gunther, but I don't know, why not give them a win? Whatever. I think traditional, I guess.
Well, and there's a bunch of other things that happened in this program, but basically, and Cody got another promo after he was F5'd on the floor, F5'd through the announce desk, and was disabled so badly that Brock could stand there and not even stand there, just cradle his head like a baby and trash talk him for a while. But now he's back in the back talking to the girl interviewer. And basically, you know, he did a good job of being flustered by this whole thing and, you know, acting like it was unexpected. But now he agrees to take the challenge for the fight. He says this is the second time for Brock to attack him. It must be because Cody's taken his spot and he can't handle it. So if you want to fight at Night of Champions, let's fight. Well, obviously he was going to accept, but again, could he even have, you know, can you wait till next week? He just got fucking laid out. Should we have seen ambulance footage?
Right after he got laid out, I was thinking how great Cody was selling it. He looked dead. I mean, his eyes were open and he was reacting a little bit, but it wasn't too much. Looked like a guy who just got beat up by Brock Lesnar. With that said, I like this promo. I like this promo better than the opening promo.
Well, he had something to talk about here.
He had something to talk about. He also wasn't dressed like Captain Marvel or whatever the outfit he comes out to the ring in.
He was dressed like Billy Shears.
Well, I don't know about that, but he was...
And by the way, how many people you think are Googling Saul Zaentz right about now? But go ahead.
Oh, that was a few minutes ago. I don't know if they're still doing that. They're now on to Billy Shears.
They're trying to figure out how to spell Zaentz.
The one and only Billy Shears. But wherever I was going, I was going there.
We've known for all these years. Cody had...
But he was wearing a hoodie as opposed to, you know... Like if Michael Jackson was a wrestler, like what would he want to wear? Like, you know, like make me something with giant collars. And, I don't know.
Cody looked like the commander of the Thunderbird Space Force there.
I DVR Thunderbirds every I guess Sunday morning on MeTV.
So you're the one. So anyway, but finally we got to let's talk about the main event and get it over with because that's Seth Franklin Rollins against Finn Balor, and I wrote at the bell, is anyone in the dark about this finish? And this time they went 3 minutes to the break, and they came back and did a little bit longer. And there's nothing wrong with the work, and both guys are talented. I don't think the finish was ever in doubt, especially they swerved us with Cody, so they wasn't going to do it again. And Seth won with a stomp, nice action-packed match, and Seth is going on to the finals on whoever comes out ahead of this thing when they do the same thing on SmackDown in 2 hours Friday night instead of 3 like this one. But that was the main event.
What do you think of the bracket for the SmackDown wing of the tournament?
I can't remember now who the fuck it is. I had it written down, but it's not on this pad. Who is it?
Hold on. I'm pulling it up right now.
Please pull it up right now.
WWE Twitter. 2 3-way matches. AJ Styles versus Edge versus Rey Mysterio. And Austin Theory versus Bobby Lashley versus Sheamus.
Those are harder to call because nobody particularly stands out as who you would think they were, as we thought in this one that it would be Cody, and then, Rollins would be the second choice, but that one's kind of flatter across the board. Everybody's got a shot at, maybe except, I don't know about AJ these days. He hadn't been presented as highly as he used to be.
What would you do? Obviously, you have Rollins is going to be one of the options, and he may be the strongest option, all things considered. You could elevate an Austin Theory. I don't know if it helps Bobby Lashley. I don't know if it's the right thing at all right now with Bobby Lashley.
Yeah.
I don't know about Sheamus. Doesn't seem like that's the path they've been on with Rey Mysterio, but you don't know. The LWO selling a lot of shirts.
Well, but also, again, who wants to see a babyface, all babyface final? And why? Why would you want to? So
AJ or Theory? AJ or Theory?
Well, no. Well, wait a minute. Are AJ Gallows and are they baby faces or heels? Do we even know?
Who are they feuding with?
They just got back. They've been gone a while.
Actually, I don't know. I don't know if they're baby faces or heels.
It'd be nice to give Theory that thing and then have a tournament for the U.S. title.
All right. Well, this sounds like Tony Khan's biggest dream. Just 3 ways and tournaments everywhere.
3 ways and tournaments everywhere. How about a battle royal? They don't do that enough.
Well, that was WWE Raw for the 8th. Jim, let's get some questions here on the show. Let me move this bracket. There's a phrase not said often enough on wrestling podcasts. Jim, a story that a lot of people have been sending us. This is from TMZ Sports. AEW star Darby Allin, I'm climbing Mount Everest next year. World's tallest mountain. Darby Allin is taking his daredevil reputation to new heights. The AEW star tells TMZ Sports he plans to climb Mount Everest, the world's highest peak, next year, one of the most physically and mentally demanding feats known to man. And he comments initially here.
Well, yeah, but then they left out the best part, and then he's going to jump off the top of it.
Well, he has not said that.
He's
no.
gonna put a Sherpa guide through a fucking table in the valley below.
30-year-old Allin says he's on a mission to surpass what other wrestlers have done before him, not just inside the ring.
They only climbed Klingman's Dome down in the Smokies. He's going to go all the way to Everest.
Not just inside the ring, but outside too. Quote, pushing the boundaries, unquote. That's been my whole MO since AEW started, Darby told Mojo Mutati, adding...
What? Wait, what?
I don't know who that is.
Did you just have a stroke?
I was reading the name and trying to get it correct. It's a TMZ reporter, it appears.
Okay.
That's why it's so important for me to meet up with the guys like Pastrana and make stuff happen.
Wait a minute, who's Pastrami?
I don't know. Do stuff that no...
Wait a minute, did you skip over something in this...
No.
In this story?
Well, there's some pictures, but... and make stuff happen, do stuff that no wrestler's ever done before. That's when Darby revealed his intention to climb one of the most unforgiving mountains on planet Earth. The thing I'm going to be doing next year that no wrestler has done before is climb Mount Everest. You heard it here first. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else interesting here, or if it's just about.
I still want to know who pastrami is, but what? I mean, yes, I guess technically you could say no professional wrestler has ever climbed Mount Everest before. I wonder if a fucking heart surgeon has done it either. What does your profession have to do?
Well, I see something.
Do you get a plaque now if you're the first person from a specific line of work to climb Mount Everest?
I'm not a fan of JBL, but didn't JBL climb a mountain? Am I wrong in thinking after he retired he did something like that?
I think he did. I don't think it was Mount Everest, but I remember seeing a picture of him in a snowbank or something. I don't know, but
well, I have something here, Jim, at the bottom.
But again, also, wait a minute. Then certainly, if Darby Allin has announced this, I mean that'd be a significant time commitment to go all the way over to Mount Everest and then to climb it. And I would think you'd have hotel and travel involved, and obviously food. You'd have to take plenty with you. I don't think they have a McDonald's on the side of the mountain. So why isn't he getting sponsors and talking about, hey, Tony, do a reality TV show, pay me $250,000 and shoot it for television, and I'll climb Mount Everest. Since he's going to do it anyway, the dipshit's already declared he's going to do it for free. He's not going to get a payoff out of it.
Well, I have something here, Jim, at the bottom of this article. Travis Pastrana helped organize the stunt Darby did last year. That was the stunt where he drove a car over a house.
Wait a minute, that's where he jumped over his house on his tricycle.
No, this was in a car.
Oh, okay. His mother gave him his learner's permit.
You may recall last August, Darby Allin completed a 96-foot jump over his home in a Jeep, calling it the sketchiest stunt he had ever attempted. But Travis Pastrana helped organize this. When I click on who he is
he a well-known mountain climber?
Well, here are the articles that pop up. Travis Pastrana practiced tricks gone bad for 5 years. And then the next article, that's from 2011. The next article's from 2022. Travis Pastrana hospitalized.
The Jeep fell on him behind some guy's house
after terrifying parachute stunt crash in Florida. And then the next article is Travis Pastrana says he broke back, hip in terrifying parachute crash.
Well, he's the guy that I'd like to have on my side setting up all my daredevil stunts.
Here's the next article. Travis Pastrana warned Darby Allin before crazy stunt, "You're going to break your back." So even he's telling Darby to tone it down.
Yeah, this guy, noted parachute accident expert Travis Pastrana, is telling Darby to tone it down. No, but here's the thing. You can't just go like you're going to the goddamn park and say, well, I'll climb this mountain. That's an expert thing to do with serious commitment of experienced mountain climbers and specific gear and knowledge and maps and all that shit. Is he trying to say that he's going to let this fucking brain dead jack off that dives out of shit with malfunctioning parachutes actually help him climb Mount Everest? Or is he just mentioning him about other shit? And he's going to actually get, I don't know, like a mountain climbing expert to go up Mount Everest. A Sherpa. Or a Tibetan monk.
Well, if you're on that side of the mountain, I guess, yes.
Well, it could be it could be the other side of the mountain.
Tony Khan has a lot of money, an unlimited budget. Darby Allin has done a lot of stunts. He's about to do this one.
Has an unlimited amount of stupid ideas. Let's put these things together. You got the brains, I got the looks. Let's make lots of money.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Cornette does the Pet Shop Boys on the show. There's a first. My point was...
What's your favorite, West End boys or West End girls?
I prefer to get to this question and finish what I was saying instead of you over there having your Casey Kasem moment of the day. My question was right there. And goddamn it. Oh, that's what it was. If you're gonna do this thing, if Darby's gonna go to Mount Everest and do something, Tony Khan has lots of money. Do you fly over a hill and do an angle at Everest?
Folks, let's take you now to some footage that was shot earlier today at base camp when Darby Allin was attempting to chisel the Eskimo's body out of the block of ice. Suddenly, Powerhouse Hobbs appeared and ate the Eskimo.
Oh, it's perfect. And then there's a snowstorm, and then there's Sting. It would work perfectly. That's the kind of stuff I want to see in AEW. Tony's money spent well.
Can you just, I mean, again, there are zip-lining things at various places you can go and do, and I'm sure they have things where people can go to dude ranches, as they call them, to experience the Western ranch experience. I'm sure they've got mountain climbing, but to go up Mount Everest, you can't just do that as some jack-off civilian, can you? Do they even let you try to do something like that? It has to be a organized expedition kind of thing, doesn't it? Do they just let every Tom, Dick, as Harry that wants to fucking saunter up Mount Everest just start out and see what happens to them?
310 people, over 310 people, possibly even 311, have died attempting to reach the summit of Mount Everest. So there you go, over 310.
Out of how many?
There is no...
How many people have climbed
There's no
Mount
margin
Everest?
of error here. I don't know.
Well, no, but does it say, if they know how many have died, how many made it? What is the percentage there? What's the win-risk-reward ratio? Win-loss quotient?
As of July 2022, there have been approximately 11,346 summit ascents by 6,098 people.
Ah,
Wow.
So some people have gone more than once. They're possibly the guides, maybe the Sherpas, Tony Sherpa and his cousin Billy Sherpa. But so then, if only 6,000 people have done it, but 300 have died, that's 5%, right?
Roughly, yes.
You got a 5% chance you ain't coming back. Fuck that. What's up there that's so fucking fun?
Well, you get to say you did it.
Well, goddamn, I'll just lie.
No one would.
Hey, it's gone past Photoshop now. They got deep fakes. They got artificial intelligence. Somebody can make a good enough looking picture of me at the top of Mount Everest to get by. And I'll just look here. We did it. We did it last Tuesday. We didn't tell anybody in case we didn't get all the way there, but we did it. Here's the picture. Thank you very much. See you later.
Yes, and that man's name is Travis Heckle. Hey, real quick before we move on, Jim, in general, and there's a lot happening in relative short order, there's a lot of different articles in different newspapers. What are your thoughts on AI, which is emerging pretty quickly?
Well, I mean, we've heard the one thing that somebody did, and I know people have put in, we talked and laughed about it, that how much information you would have to put in just to get that come out. I don't believe the AI voices that I've heard. I think they almost got Uncle Dave, but they didn't get me very well in the clip that we listened to. And honestly, you can see that when they say generate an AI interview or whatever from somebody, that is just kind of shit that has been compiled by some computer brain that, from previous interviews that they've said. It wouldn't fool me, I don't believe yet. But at the same time, there's a lot of stupid people out there that have been fooled by lesser shit and continue to be already, and it's apparently getting pretty good pretty quick. So one would have to think that sooner or later, they're going to be able to come up with video that you can't really see through. And then that could be a problem, because then you've got well-known people from all over the world in any walk of life on video saying and doing shit they really didn't say and do. And well, that could just be confusing.
But you're thinking about just deep fakes and that's a whole side thing. There's been a lot of articles, like here's one from the New York Post yesterday. The godfather of AI says its threat is more urgent to humanity than climate change.
Okay.
A prominent artificial intelligence pioneer, widely known as the godfather of AI, warned Monday that the burgeoning technology is a more urgent risk to humanity than the effects of climate change. Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, 75, flagged the danger days ahead of revealing he quit his part-time role assisting Google's AI development last month so he could speak more freely about it without disparaging the company's efforts in the sector. I'm trying to see what, let me scroll down.
Well, what does he say exactly is the thing we got to keep an eye on? I'd like to be forewarned about this.
I'm in the camp that thinks this is an existential risk, and it's close enough that we ought to be working very hard right now and putting a lot of resources into figuring out what we can do about it. Trying to see where he says what the...
See, I'll tell you one effect it's having on me. I mentioned the other day that we took Stacy's car to get service for a recall. Remember, I've always said, when I get to 300,000 miles on Black Beauty, I'm going to buy a new one and be done with it. Well, I have only driven that vehicle in the last 16 years, and I have not driven any other vehicles. And now that I see what the inside of some of the new ones look like, with all the computer shit, and they don't have a GPS map in her vehicle like I've got. It's like looking at a Rand McNally road atlas, and you go, oh, I'll turn right there. It has the roads and everything. It's a very handy feature. Hers is goddamn animated, and it moves and turns, and you go up over the horizon, and it's like you're in the middle of a goddamn video game. I'm staring at that. I'm not paying attention to the fucking traffic. It's got cameras everywhere. I've got a little thing that beeps, beeps, beeps on Black Beauty when I back up so I don't bump into anything because it's a big vehicle. She's got a camera that shows what the fucking car looks like from the sky. It's on the screen that's as big as the first television set that I owned when I was a child. It's very disorienting. And you can hook up to all this shit and download all this shit and press buttons on the screen. I don't want to be able to download the entire contents of the Library of Congress to read on my trip. I just want to fucking goddamn know where I'm going and have nice big all-weather tires and some heaviness. So I've got and four-wheel drive, safety features, all this other shit. I'm not going to be able to work whatever I get. What were we talking about?
We're talking about AI, and here I have something from this article. Critics have argued that unregulated AI could fuel the spread of misinformation, cause major losses in the job market, and provide bad actors with a new tool to wreak havoc in society. Earlier this month, Hinton admitted that he now partly regrets his life's work due to the potential risks. He expressed a fear that advanced AI would eventually grow out of the control of humans as systems develop an ability to create and run their own computer code. He cited the possibility of AI-powered weapon systems as just one scary possibility.
Yeesh. Well, I'm glad I'm in my early 60s. Because by the time they figure this shit out, it won't really matter to me anyway.
Well, one last thing on AI. I have ChatGPT up. Is there anything you'd like to test out? Anything you'd like to generate? And not in terms of image, in terms of actual text.
Yes, a plot for the best way to kidnap and dispose of Shitstain.
I think that I will get in trouble if I put that in this search engine. Anything else you could think of?
What about the original recipe for Colonel Sanders' Kentucky Fried Chicken?
What is the original recipe for Colonel Sanders' Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Because that is kept in a locked location in the basement of the KFC headquarters here in Louisville, Kentucky, and no one except the top 2 executives are allowed to know what the entire recipe is, to the extent that they even have their coating mixture made in different locations, and then it's mixed together at the individual restaurant.
Hold on, let me try it this way.
Oh, see, I already got a problem.
Well, I don't know what the hell's going on with this thing.
Apparently, the artificial intelligence is artificially intelligent.
It's artificially not doing shit. Hold on, let me refresh the page.
You broke AI. You broke chat. Go fuck yourself, or whatever it is.
Tell me about Colonel Sanders' original recipe.
Not extra crispy.
I'm just going to say original recipe. And I'm also going to take that P out of about. There we go. And it's just blinking. Oh, Colonel Sanders' original recipe refers to the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices used to make the world-famous fried chicken at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. The recipe was created by Harlan Sanders, who later became known as Colonel Sanders, in the 1930s. The exact recipe for the original blend of herbs and spices is a closely guarded secret and is only known to a few select individuals. However, it is widely believed that the recipe includes a combination of salt, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, thyme, basil, oregano, celery salt, paprika, and white pepper. The chicken is prepared by first marinating it in a buttermilk and egg mixture, then coating it in a blend of flour and the secret spice mix before frying it in hot oil until it was crispy and golden brown.
Well, that's fine. That's something any 8-year-old child walking the streets of Louisville, Kentucky could have told you. It didn't tell you, here's the lowdown, here's the information that nobody else knows, but I, with my mystical and technological and magical artificial intelligence, will disseminate that information to you that no human being is smart enough to be able to possess.
Let's try it this way.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Let's try it this way. Who would you like to hear? Who would you like this to generate a Jerry Lawler promo on?
Well, you can't just do that, can you, unless you put in information?
Give me a name.
A Jerry Lawler promo on Bill Superstar Dundee. He did more of those than anybody else.
Generate a Jerry Lawler promo on network error. Regenerate response. Well, let me tell you something, folks. Bill Superstar Dundee thinks he's all that in a bag of chips, but I'm here to tell you...
You're just doing... That's not anything that thing is writing.
It's writing it, but I'm here to tell you that he's not even close to being in my league. He's just a little fish in a big pond. And when he steps into the ring with me, he's going to find out exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, come on, Dundee. You think you could take on the king? You think you could step into my ring and come out victorious? You've got another thing coming, my friend. I've been in this business for decades, and I've faced some of the toughest competitors in the world. But you, Dundee, you're nothing special. You're just another wrestler who thinks he can make a name for himself by taking on the king. Well, let me tell you something, Dundee. When you step into that ring with me, you're not just facing a wrestler. You're facing a legend. You're facing the greatest wrestler of all time. And when it is all said and done, you'll be lucky to even walk out of the ring. So bring your best, Dundee. Bring everything you've got. But just remember, you're not facing just any wrestler. You're facing the king. And when it's all said and done, you'll bow down to the one true ruler of wrestling.
Is it all said and done now?
That's all said and done.
Okay, that sounds nothing like anything that Jerry Lawler ever said to Bill Dundee. Well, I mean, what it is it's a standard generic wrestling promo. If you changed the names from Lawler and Dundee to anything else, the only identifying remark was we gave it Jerry the King Lawler, and it was all about being the king, but there was nothing there that would differentiate that from any heel wrestling promo talking about anybody, which is why you need human beings instead of computers, because that's what make things different.
Generate a Jim Cornette promo on, let me think, what could be good? Doesn't even have to be a wrestler. It could just be anything. On Well, I don't want
bad weather.
On bad weather. Well, let me tell you something, folks. Bad weather is the bane of my existence. It's a menace to society, a scourge on the face of the earth. When it's hot, I'm sweating like a pig. When it's cold, I'm shivering like a leaf. When it's raining, I'm slipping and sliding all over the place. And when it's snowing, don't even get me started. I mean, come on, Mother Nature. What's your problem? Can't you get your act together? You're ruining my life. You're ruining my clothes, and you're ruining my hair. But let me tell you, when you mess with the hair, you're messing with the whole package. Hold on, I need a second.
If you mess with my hair, you're messing with my package.
But you know what, folks? I'm not one to back down from a challenge. I'm not going to let a little rain or snow or heat or cold get in my way. No, sir. I'm going to tough it out. I'm going to put on my big boy pants and deal with it. Because that's what separates the men from the boys, the champions from the losers, the Jim Cornettes from the rest of the world. We don't let a little bad weather get in our way. We fight through it. We persevere, excuse me. We persevere.
We preserve.
I thought it was going to be preserve. And we come out on top. So let the rain pour down, let the snow pile up, let the sun beat down on my bald head.
What?
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I'm Jim Cornette, and nothing can stop me.
Why am I bald? Has it confused me with another Jim Cornette? I may have a little spot up there, but the most of it is covered. The fuck?
Let the sun beat down on my bald head.
Now even artificial intelligence is insulting me?
Oh, so that's an example of what AI can do right now.
Well, I'm not impressed.
All right, well, let's go to our next topic here, Jim. And this is another one very popular with the listeners. Several have sent this in. Yesterday, as we are recording on Twitter, May 8th, 2023, Chris Jericho tweeted out a photo of a coat check ticket.
No, wait a minute. Don't tell the photo that he tweeted. I know what you're going to say here. Read the tweet first. It was a plea for help. I guess the 911 lines were busy. There were no police officers anywhere around. Chris Jericho was physically and mentally, I believe, assaulted.
Well, I have the tweet here.
And but the only way that he was able to report this crime was on Twitter. Read the tweet if you will.
Chris Jericho on Twitter. Hey, Mandalay Bay, it's unacceptable that you tried to bully me and assault me when all I wanted was my bags that I left at concierge. Your security staff ignored me, that's in caps, for 30 min, and when I made some noise, physically and mentally assaulted me and laughed in my face. I want restitution now! And that's in caps, with the attached photo of the coat check ticket.
Yes, the photo was not of him with a black eye looking like Britt Baker on her T-shirt because he was physically assaulted, or it wasn't a picture of him, I don't know, crying because he was mentally assaulted. I don't know. And what is restitution these days for mental assault? But it was a picture to prove these accusations, a picture of his claim check. That was it. In his hand, holding in between his finger and thumb. But, Brian, this is something, it's becoming epidemic now in this country. You go to a luxury hotel and you want to get your bags, you want to get your car from the valet park, and they just come up and they just beat the shit out of you. And then they verbally browbeat you, and then they laugh in your face. Have you heard? I've heard that happening just everywhere here lately.
I don't have specific examples in front of me, and I apologize for that. I apologize to the court. However, I could be wrong. This isn't the first time Jericho's like tweeted out some kind of like weird hotel complaint or
No,
airport complaint.
There's many times. Hey, Delta Airlines, you fucked up now, boy. Like he's assembling the Avengers somewhere with these tweets to go and rain hellfire, damnation, and fury down on these people at the various car lots and convenience stores and hotels and concierges that he seems to have an inordinate amount of trouble with. And I mean, I've done a lot of traveling, and I will admit that I normally stayed in more cost-effective establishments that didn't have valet parking, and I generally take my own bags to my own room, except when forced. But I have never been verbally or physically assaulted by the valet parking guy. And remember, it was a couple of years ago, he went over to the UK for a tour, and he tweeted, well, this hotel I'm in sent the police to my room and kicked me out for no apparent reason at 3:00 in the morning.
I was minding my own business.
Minding my own business in my own room.
Blasting my radio.
but listening to music, I believe, was what his story was. But here's the thing. They don't send the fucking police the first time for loud music. I've been in a few situations where I've been the person calling saying, why are people bouncing off the wall on the other side of my fucking hotel room wall here? And I assure you, it takes 3 or 4 fucking visits from management before any cops are called. But so he got kicked out of a hotel and said he was walking the streets in the middle of the night in the UK somewhere a couple of years ago. He's constantly got a problem with a restaurant or an airline. And one would think that if tweeting about it was resolving the issue, he wouldn't have so many of these problems. Maybe he ought to figure out what's causing it all and or talk to somebody about it. We should have had better help in here at this point. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that just if there was no contributing factor, mitigating circumstance, or fault on the part of the customer, that even if you find a prick working at the, concierge, area of the Mandalay Bay, that at the same time, they're not going to physically and verbally assault you, as well as laugh in your face after that happens. I mean, there's got to be 2 sides to this story, Brian, don't you think, is what I'm trying to say.
Did Chris threaten to kick their ass and they laughed at him?
Now that may be possible. I'm wondering what the entertainment factor was in how he confronted this situation, and what, he had to wait for 30 minutes, and I'm sure he probably spoke up about it. And to be honest, that's another reason why I don't like to stay in hotels where you valet your car or they have to carry your bags for you, because then you're at the mercy of somebody else's schedule. You got to go somewhere, they won't get your car. You need some shit, you ain't got your bags. But if you're going to do that, don't do that. Or if you're not going to do that, then do that. See, that's clear.
Are you being a bully if you use your Twitter mob?
Well, if there was legitimate bad service or a legitimate complaint, then I think that's pretty much justified, or certainly something that could be done. But when you go past, okay, boy, they took a long time to get me my shit, and they're understaffed, or they have bad attitudes or whatever, and you go into, I was physically and mentally assaulted, then maybe that you've gone past something that can be dealt with on Twitter, and you need to go, I don't know, like the manager. What did the manager have to say?
Hey,
when the staff physically assaulted this television personality?
I just found a recent example from January 22nd, 2023, 12:45 a.m. from Chris Jericho on Twitter. Hey, Derek!
Wait! Hey, Derek.
I can't speak. Hold on. Hey, Derek, the manager. I'm a Hilton's Hotel Diamond member with 2.5 million points. So why did you threaten me when I checked into the Hilton President in Kansas City and you didn't have the rooms I paid for available? You threatened.
How many rooms does he need?
You threatened and demeaned me when all I wanted was the rooms I booked. Awful service! All in caps.
He was threatened and demeaned?
If I'm Derek, I frame that fucking tweet. If I'm Derek, I have that tweet in my wallet. I hand it out to people.
Okay, so that was when?
January.
That was January. Why does Chris Jericho keep crossing the paths of all of these mean, incompetent, violent people?
The question is, what chain has he not done this to? This is Hilton, Mandalay Bay. I mean, he has all these points. Maybe he tries to stick with Hilton. I mean, it's a very nice hotel typically in most places.
I'm a Diamond member as well. I've not had any issues with being physically assaulted at any of their locations.
Who hasn't more points, you or Chris Jericho?
Well, he apparently don't use them. Because I've had millions of points over time, but I've used quite a bit of them as well, whereas it sounds like he's saving up to go to the fucking moon. You know, you can pretty much get a free night in any fucking Hilton property, even the Waldorf Astoria for like 80,000 points. He's got 2.5 million.
Is this a gimmick? Now I'm starting to wonder if this is a gimmick. Here's another tweet. January 7th, so before the other one, 2023, 8:20 p.m. Hi, reservations.com. I accidentally pressed wrong button for the suites I reserved for Wyndham Hotels in Deerfield Beach. When I called to change 20 seconds later, I was told, quote, tough luck, deal with it.
What?
I find that unreasonable, and I would like to change, not cancel, all in caps, this reservation, total swindle.
You know who he sounds like on Twitter?
Don't say it, don't.
He sounds like disgraced ex-president Fuckknuckle. Awful service.
That's why he buys hotels, so he has a place to stay.
Unacceptable. Awful service. Witch hunt. Here's another thing. What did you just said there that said he was... How was he mistreated there? How did he phrase it?
Highreservations.com. I accidentally pressed the wrong button for the suites I reserved for Wyndham Hotels in Deerfield. When I called to change 20 seconds later, I was told, quote, tough luck.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Deal with it.
Deal with it. You know, again, I hate the telephone workers in most places because they're usually either lost or stupid, potentially rude, but I've never had any, no matter how bad, say tough luck and deal with it. They're being monitored. If they say tough luck and deal with it, I think they get canned or an electric shock in their ass from their desk chair or something. They're supposed to say, we're sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do, but not tough luck, motherfucker, deal with it. How does he elicit these responses from people?
Well, here's another one. This one goes back a ways. July 18th, 2019, 9:05 p.m. Hey, Delta baggage service lady at Atlanta Airport. When a connection is missed and you hold my bags hostage overnight, it's not necessary to be rude or flippantly say, quote, I don't care if you've flown 3 million miles on Delta. Okay. There's plenty of other airlines to spend my money on.
Not at this rate. There's not. They're going to see him coming. They're going to put him on a federal no-fly list just for being a prick.
All right. Well, but apparently Delta texted him, tweeted him back. Hey, Chris, we're terribly sorry for the events described. Please know that's not our normal level of service. please know if we can assist via this channel, feel free to share via private message for additional review. Thanks for sharing. We appreciate you letting us know. HAA. And then he quote tweeted that and said, I'm waiting for your DM, Delta.
Oh, and you know what? He's hell when he takes that expired potato salad back to the deli, too. He wants his money back for the whole container, not just half of it. 'Cause he may have eaten the first half, but that was before he realized it went bad.
This should be his new gimmick. He just gets on Twitter, complains about everything.
Hey, Todd.
Well,
hey,
you know
Arnold,
what?
Fuck you.
Well, you know what? These are obviously just the examples that have been made public. I'm sure there are many other examples that we don't even know about publicly, or at least a lot of you don't. But I would think, whether I was Chris Jericho looking for the ability to play my music at any hour, day or night, and drunkenly yell at anyone I want, or perhaps you're a hotel chain looking to get some guy that thinks he's in Bon Jovi out of your hotel, perhaps someone needs to sue.
There's a need here in some form or fashion for legal representation, and folks, go no further than this man for that.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Now, folks, you may say, what about if you're a put-upon traveler? Winding your way around the country and encountering various rude people that mentally and physically assault you and hold your possessions hostage, you may need to sue. But what about if the flip-flop was on the other foot? What about if you're one of these many people that works in the service industry? You're a bag handler. You're a valet parker. You're a hotel clerk. You're someone at the ticket counter of a major airline. And suddenly, for no apparent reason, someone rushes in and begins berating you about the service that you have not provided for them. And they identify themselves as a TV star of high importance, and something must be done because they've been mentally and physically assaulted, and it's your fault. You got to have some representation. That's why you need to call Stephen P. New, because he will get that Bon Jovi wannabe out of your hair once and for all, even if he has to pull out that Bon Jovi wannabe's hair plugs to do it. And folks, again, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. If you're a member of a hotel chain, he will defend you against the charges that you should have known better than to let the guy have the key to the minibar. Then if you are a valet parker or a baggage handler, he will defend you because you couldn't give the person their possessions because the smell of vodka from the claim ticket made your eyes water and you couldn't read the number. Whatever the case may be, folks, Stephen P. New is going to take care of you. 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com. Don't be attacked and harassed on Twitter by Karen Jericho. Do something about it. Defend yourself today in a court of law.
Well, Jim, let's get some questions here on the show. Questions from the Cult of Cornette, and we'll start with a question from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. This one
that everybody's still trying to get into.
Well, we have now allowed 8.4 thousand, or 8,400, I guess I should say.
Either was right.
We've allowed 8,400 people into the group so far, and there are still tens of thousands trying to get in, but we're going through every application, so stay tuned. And if you're not going to get dick in your comments on the questions, maybe that's also why. But here's a question. Here's a question from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group from William McPherson. What if Roddy Piper had remained in the NWA Jim Crockett Promotions in the 80s? How big of a difference maker would he have been? And would he have been either the top babyface or the top heel from any time between 84 and 87?
Ooh, see, therein lies the problem. Because the top heel was Flair, the top babyface was Dusty, and that may be why Roddy didn't stick around. I think Piper would have been natural as a heel, but at the same time, he and Flair were so good against each other. But at the same time, can you imagine a four horsemen of Flair, Arn, Tully, and Piper?
And that's what it would have been, because Piper was his drinking buddy.
Yeah, and that the whole reason the Horsemen got together was because they were the group. Well, Piper would have been in that group. So, I mean, obviously, all things considered, it worked out better for Roddy because he became the premier, heel to Hogan's first run. And they're still doing documentaries about that. And Roddy was the guy that provided the antagonism for most of the early years of the WWF there, whereas if they hadn't had him, the whole thing with Rock and Wrestling Connection, with Piper, with MTV, or not with Piper, but with Lauper, MTV, the whole 9 yards, that wouldn't have happened. So the promos in the NWA and the matches would have been off the fucking charts with Roddy as one of the horsemen, but he probably wouldn't have done as well and it would have definitely been a big difference for Crockett, I think, just to have Roddy on the, but I mean, our roster was so loaded already, but Roddy stood out as one of the absolute best. But, it probably worked out the best way for Roddy and for the WWF that he did what he did, because even talent-wise, he was there, but if Dusty had to make the decision, do I make him the top babyface or myself? Or do I turn Flair babyface and make Piper the top heel, but then me and Flair on the same side? Eventually, that might not have worked out.
There have always been stories or direct comments that one of the reasons that Rick Steamboat, if not the main reason that Rick Steamboat left Jim Crockett Promotions for the World Wrestling Federation in early 85 was Dusty as the booker. Ricky Steamboat recognized what his limitations would be on the card, with Dusty eating up the top spot for a babyface. You just discussed that with Piper. What would Piper do? Because you have Dusty here, you have Flair here.
Yeah.
Can you see is there any scenario where Dusty would have been able to book and use himself and not have himself as the top guy? Where he mentally would have been able to do that?
Well, and part of the thing also is, you know how much I love Ricky Steamboat's work. Steamboat was not the box office attraction Dusty was. At that point in 1984, he just wasn't. And wasn't going to be, I don't think. Tremendous wrestler. And he and Flair were the gold standard. But as far as big show, major box office, big money match, Dusty outranked Steamboat. That may not have been the case with Roddy. Although it would have been close again. People again forget what Dusty's status was in wrestling at that point in time. You would be looking at Hogan, Piper, Flair, Dusty as the four guys, and Andre still, as the four guys that were the big box office attractions in the entire business, not just one company. So that would have made it a little, I think Steamboat would have been great with Dusty because Dusty loved athletic baby faces like that, the Rock and Roll Express. They weren't all the Road Warriors, but he wasn't going to be the top guy.
Plus, if Magnum was coming in, that was going to only hurt Steamboat. I was about to say,
that's the thing. Steamboat didn't want to necessarily, I don't think, had a problem maybe being behind Dusty, but then there's Magnum. And now he's number 3. And Magnum was new. Steamboat had been in the Carolinas for years. So that was, he just saw the overall scheme of things, with Dusty bringing in his own guys rather than just leaving because of Dusty himself. But that would have hurt Magnum, because if Piper was there, it would have been harder for Maggie to get over, because Piper was so established and a force of nature, whereas, Magnum was still new. So he would have been number 3 on the babyface side if Roddy was there.
If Piper stays, well, he already started. I was going to say, does he get They Live? He had already started acting before then.
Yeah.
But would he have gotten They Live?
Well, he might have got They Live, but would he have got the time off to do it? I don't know. And in that case, he might have said, well, fuck it, then I'll just go do that. Because Dusty did not like to give people time off. I asked for time off to go to a wedding one time. He said, is it going to be in Greensboro? Because that's where you're going to be on that day.
Jim, our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, but it was originally actually sent in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. I thought it was a good question. I asked him to send it here. From Marc-Andre Cyr in Quebec City. Hello, Jim and Brian. There was a 2-hour interview with both Rougeau brothers on a major radio station in Montreal earlier this week. While Jock was being his usual carny self, Raymond was very interesting. Was very interesting to listen to, and told many stories about the rivalry with the Garvins, Haku nearly killing people in hotel bars, and Jimmy Hart being an all-around awesome manager who also prioritized putting his talent over himself. Raymond also talked about his in-ring retirement and mentioned something regarding Tully and Arn and Heenan politicking their way to the title, while the Rougeaus had been promised to be the next in line for a run as champions. He said this is what caused him to finally pull the plug on his wrestling career, because he was already thinking about it prior to that event. I was wondering if, although this was before Jim's arrival in WWF, Jim had heard about Arn and Tully or Heenan using politics to make their way to the titles early. Also, while I've heard Jim talk about Jock a few times, I was wondering if he had any thoughts to share on Raymond Rougeau, either as a wrestler or a commentator, or if he was there for his boxing match with Owen Hart at the Montreal Forum.
Yes, I was. We talked about that, you and I, a couple weeks ago. I think we've talked about it here on the program, but it was at the Montreal Forum, August 2nd. I'm squinting because I don't have my glasses on. 1996. Owen Hart had a boxing match with Raymond Rougeau, and I was in Owen's corner along with a boxer from Montreal named Dino Clavette, if I'm not mangling that name, who had a gym there. But the real former heavyweight boxer George Chuvalo was in Raymond's corner, and I guess he's had something to do with Montreal. But anyway, Raymond had boxed some in his younger days and kind of knew how to work it, and Owen was laughing because he was a boxer like I'm a goddamn astronaut, right? But he could work, so they had an entertaining a little boxing match before Raymond won. Now, Raymond was, I don't know how he was as a French announcer because I don't speak French, but Raymond was more, whereas Jacques was the over-the-top brother who, as we've talked about, had the big personality, and he got heat with people because he had that French-Canadian personality, right? And things he'd say, and the big boy, like that. But Raymond was more quiet, down to earth, and got out of the business first, as he mentioned. And I thought Raymond started much earlier also. He was the older brother, so he had a long career, and was all the Rougeaus, as we mentioned, were over in Montreal, going back to their father and uncle and etc. But the politicking part of the question, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions on Raymond or Jacques, either one, but Tully and Arn didn't immediately show up in the WWF and start politicking, nor was Bobby Heenan the kind of guy that went and politicked what happened pretty much was that I'm sure they did promise the Rougeaus they'd have a run with the belts. But then, as you'll recall, Tully and Arn's debut in the WWF didn't have a lot of pre-planning to it. They came in after they got sideways with Dusty, especially Tully. They came in that night in Philadelphia, September the 10th, 1988, gave the notice, dropped the belts to us, and they were gone. And you might remember better than I do, but how long after that was it that they showed up in the WWF? It was pretty quickly.
They showed up within a month, and also this is around a period of time. You got to remember that the Rougeau Dynamite Kid incident happened.
Yes. And see, here's the thing. At the same time, people now are going, well, how could they just give notice and leave that night? And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure their contracts had been up and they were working on new ones. And they tried to start renegotiating their contracts, Tully and Arn and a few of the other guys, right after Bobby and Stan and I had done it that previous April. Because we went in first and told Jimmy Crockett that we were upset about the payoffs that we'd been getting because it wasn't our fault. Our various programs our opponents had issues and had been broken up or didn't, come through or whatever. Business was down as a whole. But that's where he was still believing he was going to get the pay-per-view revenue. He was going to get the syndicated TV revenue that they had, figured they'd promised they were going to get with this syndicated TV network. So he renegotiated us. And since we got in first, we signed ours. And I've said this before. I think between the time that he agreed to it and the time that we signed it, that's what he found out, because we don't know the exact date, that he found out that they were in trouble and behind. But I think it was in between. But he signed it anyway to keep us happy, knowing that if things didn't work out, it wouldn't cost him any extra money. And as it worked out, it didn't. It cost TBS money. But Arn and Tully didn't get to do theirs as quickly. He didn't sign theirs. So I think theirs had expired, and they were working on something in the summer based on the fact that TBS was imminently going to be buying the company. That may have been what happened. But anyway, they didn't have a lot of time to plan for Tully and Arn's arrival in the WWF. They gave them to Heenan because Heenan was the top heel manager. And if you got paired with Heenan, then you were automatically at that period of time taken as a main event level talent, whether tag, single, whatever. And naturally, when they get the top heel team from their only competition, they're going to immediately push them to the top of the company, because it wouldn't make sense not to do it. And Vince didn't do things back then that didn't make sense. Maybe after age is a different story. But so even if the Rougeaus had been promised, they didn't know they were getting Tully and Arn. Then they did. And yes, they're going to use them. And they're going to put them with Bobby. And Bobby didn't go politicking to Pat like, oh, let us win. He did his job. So the Rougeaus are sitting there seeing that, oh shit, we were supposed to get it. And all of a sudden, here these guys come in and they're with Bobby, whatever. But as you mentioned also, the problems with the Bulldogs had happened fairly recently to that. And, that was not it wasn't ever worked out to everybody's satisfaction all the way around. The Bulldogs left. I'm sure there was still some heat on the Rougeaus. So that may have been the real story behind that. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying that's how he perceived it.
Remember years ago when he was alive, Bad News Allen, Bad News Brown did an interview, or did several, saying that Vince McMahon told him when he signed him, I'm going to make you the world champion. You'll be the first black world champion. Didn't happen. Bad News Allen was pretty upset about it, or at least it bothered him, as it would anyone. You hear the Rougeaus saying it here. Do you think Vince says these things and changes his mind? Does he say these things just to get you to do what he wants you to do and he has no intention on doing it? When he promises guys, especially in that era, where titles meant a whole lot more than they do now, was it often for guys to be promised belts, and do you think Vince McMahon would have meant it if he offered it? Or said it was going to happen?
Here's the thing. I have talked to Vince as talent with the Midnight Express in another company, him pitching us to come there. I've seen Vince talk to other talents that he's bringing in. I've worked on the creative team, and I have never legitimately heard Vince McMahon promise anyone that they would win a title when he's trying to get them to come to work for him. That's never been part of the pitch. You're going to be the champion. Now, honestly, you know, when it's been somebody that's been there and maybe they're trying to come back like a Hogan or a whatever, but well, yeah, we'll do this or that, maybe that. But no, and Vince, I don't even think would have been the one to tell the Rougeaus, we're going to put the belts on you. They were already working there anyway. That wasn't it wasn't like a enticing them as part of signing the contract. But in those days, like Pat or somebody in the office might have come to him and said, hey, we're thinking of doing, a program with you and whoever the champions were. And maybe, we'll switch the belts and we'll run with that, whatever, just ideas. And here's what plans are. Not necessarily dates and places, but this is what we're thinking about. Those things change. And I just gave you a reason why that it would have changed. But as far as bad news, I'm sorry. Vince may have very well said, Allin, you'll make more money than you've ever made in your life. That was one of his favorite lines, and often it was true. He may have said, I'm going to use you on top. You're going to be, the toughest guy in the WWE or whatever, right? Like he'll tell Vader, you're going to be the Mastodon or you're going to whatever. And he might have even said, you could be the first black WWF champion. Who knows, pal? But he would never say, and especially to, I'm sorry, but Bad News Allin, great talent and had a great gimmick and was a legitimate badass, but there's no way that Vince McMahon would have ever had him under consideration to be the actual WWF champion in the 80s. He was a heel. Vince liked baby faces. He was in his 40s. Vince liked younger guys. He was a badass, but his body didn't look good, and Vince liked the Ultimate Warrior, who was the furthest thing from a badass, but what a body. So that just doesn't make any sense, and that's why I don't believe it.
Yeah, and again, Tully and Arn came in. By the spring of 89, they were working with the Rockers. By the summer, it was them and Demolition. They got the belts. The Rougeaus did a program with the Rockers. And then I think it was the Bushwhackers, and then they were kind of gone. But Jim,
But then, and one more thing, and then Tully and Arn, after a year, they were only there for a year, they made the decision to go back to WCW. Flair had gotten the book. Flair had paved the way with Herd to offer them $250,000 apiece to come back and reform the Horsemen, because Flair had already gotten business back on the upswing. The pay-per-view buy rates were the best they'd ever be till 96. The ratings were the best that they had been and would be till 96. And he said he talked Tully and Arn into coming back and got the okay to offer them the money. And so that's when, after 1 year, Tully and Arn they both still lived in Charlotte. They wanted to come back to the Carolinas. They wanted to see their family more often. They wanted to work in the NWA. The WWF was not their cup of tea. Everything was fine. And then Tully didn't give a shit, so he flunked the drug test on the way out, and Herd upheld the results of the drug test, withdrew the offer to Tully, ended his Major League Wrestling career, cut Arn's offer by $100,000, saying that he was not worth as much as a single as he was with a team with Tully, and screwed Arn Anderson and his family when Arn had no recourse because he'd already given his notice. That was why people wanted to fucking murder Jim Herd in a dark alley and throw his body in a river. But that's what happened. They were only there for a year, so they didn't come in and politic and want to get in good with the office and stay there forever. They came in, they were used as top guys, and then they made the decision to leave. And Herd fucked them on the way out, so Vince didn't have to.
And it's important to note the Rougeaus, I think their last match as a team was Royal Rumble. So that's January of 1990. They were out of there right after Tully and Arn, 2 months later. But Jim, let's get another question here. This one sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group by Carrie Nellum.
That can't be a real name.
Well, we don't know that for sure. What do you think of WWE's thinking behind not having Gunther as part of the World Heavyweight Championship tournament?
Well, good succinct question. I hadn't really sat and thought. I'm glad he's not, because he ain't going to win it, and that would mean he's going to get beat. He hasn't really showed up on the new program yet. He's still got, the Intercontinental title. Maybe that's the loophole. He's the Intercontinental champion, so he can't be in the tournament for the world title or whatever. But, I mean, it makes no sense logically. If you were looking for the 6 best guys on that show's roster, Gunther would be part of it instead of The Miz or whatever. And he's a champion, but it doesn't bother me because if they put him in it, they'd beat him, and I don't want them to beat him.
All right. Well, succinct answer to the succinct question.
That's what else can you say? None of in the territory days, if you had a tournament, there were always guys that you knew weren't going to go all the way, right? If you had a tournament of 8 guys or 12 guys or whatever the case, but there were enough top guys in it that you could reconcile yourself with. These are all the main event guys, but they still needed 3 other guys. So that's why those guys are in it. But all the top guys would be. Well, now when they have a tournament involving everybody that's just convenient for them to put in it. And there's multiple people that the fans would say, well, why wouldn't that guy be in a tournament for the world title instead of this fucking flunky? But they don't expect anybody to give a shit that closely because they don't anymore.
All right. Well, Jim, let me ask you a question outside of the realm of professional wrestling.
Uh-oh.
Some big news that broke this week. Bill Saluga, better known as Raymond J. Johnson Jr., passed away.
No! How old was he?
Let me pull that up, but for the listeners who have heard Jim reference it but never heard it, let's play a little bit of this while I pull that up.
Please do.
Oh, how are you this week, Mr. Johnson?
You doesn't have to call me Johnson. My name is Raymond J. Johnson Jr. Now, you can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay, or you can call me Johnny, or you can call me Sonny, or you can call me Johnny, or you can call me Ray J, or you can call me RJ, or you can call me RJJ, or you can call me RJJ Jr. But you don't have to call me Johnson.
Well, there it is. Maybe the
Babies
biggest.
in the air. Babies in. That's all he had to do.
Maybe
that
the biggest laugh he ever got.
But that's all he had to do. He would come out as soon as somebody would say Mr. Johnson. He would say, "Oh, you doesn't gotta call me Johnson," and the place would blow. And then he'd go through the fucking thing. And, there was even a disco single. Did you ever hear the Dancin' Johnson disco single?
Maybe. I don't know.
I have it in my. I will record that and send a copy of that to you so that you can hear it, because they made a disco single out of him with on a disco beat of him just over and over doing his thing, and that was his thing.
He was 85 years old.
Wow. So what year was that hot? Was that 76, 7, 8?
Well, then he did commercials, remember?
Well, yeah, but I mean the first routine. He was how old did you say he was just now?
85.
So he was already 40 when he did that shit.
This is a 1978 commercial. I'm sure you remember. Let's go to this.
Give me an Anheuser-Busch Natural Light.
Just say natural.
You see, you doesn't have to call it Anheuser-Busch Natural Light, and you doesn't have to call it Anheuser Natural, and you doesn't have to call it Busch Natural. Just say natural.
Johnson's right.
Oh, you can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay, or you can
For
call
a
me...
great tasting light beer, just say natural.
But you doesn't have to call me Johnson.
2 naturals, please.
Please don't ask him his name.
Name? You can call me Ray, or you can call me...
He made a whole career out of that.
Yes. What do we say? Like, him and Father Guido Sarducci, they got 20 years and fucking millions of dollars off of one fucking bit.
Let's go to this.
Hey, let's play a game.
Game? Oh, you can play Einstein if you got some mind. You can be the red, and you can be the green, and you can be the yellow, and you can be the blue. But don't you touch Einstein until he tells you to. Einstein's a computer that's lots of fun. 4 can play or just 1. If you win, Einstein knows, but if you lose, Einstein goes.
Oh, Johnson.
Oh, you doesn't have to call it Johnson. Its name is Einstein. Or you can call it Ein, or you can call it...
Well, there he is. Bill Saluga, 85 years old, from Youngstown, Ohio.
I'm sure there'll be a monument erected in the town square. Can you imagine how long the funeral is going to take? Think about that, because when the preacher gets up there and says, "We are here today to say goodbye to Raymond J. Johnson Jr." You didn't have to call him Johnson. Why, you could call him Ray, or you could call him Jay, or you could call him Ray J, or you could call him RJ, or you could call him RJJ, or you could call him RJJ Jr., but you doesn't have to call him Johnson. See, that's going to take a while.
Do you think they're going to put that on a stone? You can call me Ray. Well, just at least the beginning of it.
They may have to, like, instead of like a regular tombstone that's stuck in the ground and sticking up, they may have to do like a cinerama, a wide screen tombstone where they can get all that in.
Well, our respect and thoughts to the memory.
If they can find a place to bury him, because they went to the cemetery and they said, "Oh, you doesn't got to bury him here. Well, you could bury him there, or you could bury him over there, or you could bury him across the street, but you doesn't got to bury him here."
Well, we're not going to bury the show here. Let's get a few more questions here on the show. Jim, this next one from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group was sent in by Sohail Nandwani.
What?
Again,
What?
we have an international audience, a vast
Well, you don't
international...
got to call him Soheel. Why, you could call him Boot Heel, or you could call him Shit Heel.
His name is Sohail Nandwani, and I'm sure I'm butchering his name. I apologize, but his question, in your opinion, what is the most prestigious secondary title, in both singles and tag team wrestling history? For example, in my opinion, the WWF Intercontinental title is the most prestigious secondary title in wrestling history.
Well, again, in wrestling history, that takes into account 125 years or a little bit more. But also, then the secondary title has changed meaning and placement and the way that it's utilized over the period of time. All championships in the territory days, except for the world title of one of the major groups, the NWA, the AWA, the WWF, at one point in time, the WWA in California, at one point in time, the WWA in Indiana, just because of Bruiser, and a few other places here and there. Those were the world champions. Any other title anywhere in any territory was, by definition, a secondary title and admitted as such. The U.S. champion in Detroit, or the Southern heavyweight champion in Tennessee, or the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion in the time in the Carolinas, or when they had the North American title in Mid-South, those were all the top titles in that particular territory, but they were secondary titles to the world champion, and the fans knew that. And that's what made the dynamic of the world champion coming to face that regional title holder to see if he could win the big one in his home market. That's what made that draw. You never had, and when they appeared on the same card, when the world champion was in Florida, the main event, the NWA world title, the Florida heavyweight champion would be on the card, but he was there all the time, whereas the world champion came in and went. So you didn't have a situation like you've got it now, where the world champion in the WWE is around just as often as the Intercontinental champion or the U.S. champion, where the world champion in AEW is still on the program almost every week. Even if MJF doesn't wrestle often, he's still there with all the other mini champions in AEW. They coexist. on a regular basis. That changes the dynamic. Then that really does illustrate that this guy, he's not the best that this company has, and he's got a chance against the world champion if the world champion ever comes in. It's the world champion is already here, and this guy's got a belt that's not quite as important as that. So that changes the dynamic. As far as what was the most important secondary title in wrestling history?
Prestigious.
Prestigious. I mean, let's face it. Is there a belt in wrestling history almost anywhere from any company that, you know, people walking down the street said, oh my God, just because he won that belt, he walks on water. That, you know, important for box office, important for a guy to have to further his career, important to draw money with, important to be featured on big crowds, that kind of important, or big cards rather, in front of big crowds. The Missouri heavyweight champion was for years, even though the title was only based out of St. Louis, was the stepping stone to the NWA world title. If you could go to St. Louis, win the Missouri title, and do well with it there and draw with it, that was a major stepping stone to the NWA title. At various points, not only did all of the modern NWA champions hold that title first, but guys that were in consideration for it that never quite made it, the Ted DiBiase's. Was there one or two Von Erichs that held the Missouri title at various points?
Did 3 Von Erichs hold the Missouri title?
Kerry, Kevin, and David? Did Kerry ever get it?
Yeah, Kerry definitely got it. I think. Hold on,
okay,
look it up.
Well, while you're looking it up. Then also there was the United States heavyweight title, not that the Sheik used or not in any of the other territories, but the United States title that Vern Gagne held in the days of the Dumont Network in the early 50s, which was at one point, because of the television exposure and the fact that the Chicago wrestling was the dominant network program, that title was not only seen as, but being marketed as potentially on par with the NWA world title. It was a very important belt that in the 50s was only held by Vern Gagne, Dick the Bruiser, Wilbur Snyder, the absolute top guys. Go ahead.
When they brought the U.S. title back in 75, I think it was, they had that big tournament where they brought in Terry Funk and they brought in Harley Race, I think. They brought in different people from around the country. That was the debut. Was that the debut of Blackjack Mulligan?
I think it was. He gave notice. He and Lanza were.
Did he give notice?
Yeah. Well, no. He and Lanza were tag team champions for Vince Sr., but he got the opportunity to go to work for George Scott in the Carolinas as a top babyface and saw the opportunity and took it and was wise to do so and was on top in the Carolinas for the next 5 years.
But did he give notice?
I think he did tell him. I think he did tell him I'm leaving. And didn't they drop the belts? He did business, didn't he?
Let me double check that. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure that he did. But Lanza couldn't talk him out of it. I know that much. But it was a big spot as a major single star. And the United States title then that they started in the Carolinas that replaced the more regional Mid-Atlantic title. And I think at one point they had the Eastern States heavyweight title or whatever, but.
Yeah, you're right. They dropped him on the way out. Let me ask you this. And by the way, all 3 of the Von Erich, well, not all 3, but the 3 main Von Erich brothers all held the Missouri State Championship. Where are you at with the discussion of, it was an old discussion, you don't really hear it anymore, but the U.S. title for Crockett versus the Missouri Championship being the most prestigious secondary title in the NWA?
Well, and that's the thing is then it was 2 different things. The United States title they were using in the Carolinas. They were drawing huge money. They had a 3-state territory with multiple markets that were capable of drawing 10,000 fans or more. The Missouri title was defended in St. Louis at the prestigious Kiel Auditorium for Sam Muchnick. but he didn't have a territory. It was that title. It was that town. It was a way to go and get over in St. Louis, in the city that had been the seat not only of NWA wrestling, but St. Louis in the 40s was probably, St. Louis and Toronto were the two dominant cities for pro wrestling in North America because of the fucking incredible tear that Bill Longson went on, where he never main evented a fucking show in St. Louis through World War II that drew less than 10,000 people. But it was still only for money, for box office. You went and you made a fortune in one night, considering the, standards of the time, working a main event in St. Louis. But in the Carolinas, as the U.S. champion, you were every night, you were in Greensboro and Charlotte and Roanoke and Richmond and Norfolk and big buildings. So it was a better spot for a wrestler.
All right, Jim, we've received several questions about Jon Moxley's recent quotes.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm trying to see where they are. They're from
do they have subtitles in English where you can understand them?
Well, they're from a Sports Illustrated article. I have it here, but the headline's going around several places. Jon Moxley says that the BCC versus Elite feud is, quote, the absolute apex of pro wrestling.
Wait a minute, is that a new plumbing company he's starting, Apex Plumbing? Or is that, I've seen like an Apex septic tank pumping company. Is that what, because, wait a minute, let me get the dictionary out, because I must have the wrong definition of Apex. Hold on here. Armstrong, architecture, arboretum.
Apex.
Appear. Aha, I'm closing in on it. Apart, apathy, aperture, apex, the highest point, the peak.
Yeah.
So
when Rocky got to the top of the stairs.
So let me get this straight. A balding plumber, Wheeler Useless, poor misused Bryan Danielson, and the now mute Claudio Castagnoli against the EVPs, and do they have a fourth guy on their side? And who would it be?
Takeshita.
There you go. That's better than Cody and Brock, Reigns and Cody. I don't know. Let's go through history. Flair and Steamboat, fucking Hart and Austin, Midnight Rock and Roll. This is the apex. This is not even. Is he saying it's even drivel and ridiculous that he would say that it's as good as wrestling is now, when most wrestling is the shits now to begin with, but it's not even as good now as other shit that's going on that's better in a bad period of wrestling. What is he does he think if people hear this from him, they will just automatically believe it? Does he not care that he comes off looking like a fucking obnoxious, egotistical idiot? Or why would you say something that ridiculous?
I'm attempting to find the isolated part of this where he says the quote. There's a lot of quotes in this. Oh, here it's actually the last thing in the fluff article here.
I figure after he said that, everybody fainted dead away from fucking astonishment, and they all went home.
The BCC versus the Elite? This rivalry is the absolute apex of professional wrestling right now. We're going to have a great crowd, and we have the steel cage. It's got all the ingredients for a really memorable night.
And of course, how can you have great pro wrestling without trying to stab other people in the faces with screwdrivers? And are they going to have a cage match? Yeah, they are.
Wednesday.
Him and Twinkle Toes are going to get in a cage, and Twinkle Toes will be whistling Stranger in Paradise, and Moxley will pull out the entire contents of the fucking Schick razor blade factory, and they'll just have a fun old time.
Well, here's a quote, Jim, from the article talking about his history with Kenny Omega. At the time, I'm not going to do his voice. At the time, Kenny was known as the best wrestler in the world. I was coming off...
By who?
I was coming off fucking off from WWE, so I was in the news, and people wanted to see what I was going to do. I was a hot name. He was a hot name. We'd never entered each other's universes before. On the first show, we've got all these incendiary ingredients lined up. Jericho, a TV deal, the Young Bucks, and then the real explosive fuel was me and Kenny at Double or Nothing.
Wait a minute, have they wrestled before? I've forgotten about it.
That's where the match got lit.
Did we have to watch that?
That's where the match got lit, and we set it ablaze. It was the spark that ignited the whole blaze that is AEW, and 4 years later, it's coming back around again. It feels really good. It feels like where we should be. You know, when you read his comments in a normal voice...
It sounds insane. If you... because a normal person doesn't speak like that. And who has convinced this guy that he is that good? I mean, I can see some people with lower standards going, he's all right. But how could anybody have convinced him that he is this big megastar and this great wrestler and this incredible box office attraction? Who has told him that? And how can we get them a phone call with better help?
Well, I'm scanning this article. As I said, a lot of quotes here. The BCC is real. It's only been around for a year, but those guys have been my partners for like 10 years. I don't have many close friends in the business.
Useless?
Danielson and Claudio, those two are on the list of his friends in the business. They're best friends, training partners, and I've spent so much time in the ring with them. The only difference was, back then, it was the opposite side of... Well, he's just rambling here at this point. Well, they're pitching fluff articles again to Sports Illustrated. What does that say?
Again, even if you think that you are that good, who talks like that? Unless you're a heel in gimmick. Who actually comes out, I'm the greatest thing?
The Apex.
And, I mean... He went to rehab. At some point, don't they sit you down and make you look at yourself realistically and what your strengths, weaknesses, good points, faults, whatever are? How can he legitimately believe? How can he look in the mirror? How can he watch himself on videotape? Does he not see that ridiculously underdeveloped body, the pale flesh, the lack of fucking hair on the top of his head, the fucking lack of quality work, the lack of psychology, the fucking lack of bladesmanship? I'm glad that he didn't decide to become the next sleight of hand artist. Fucking Chris Angel has nothing to worry about. But what is it that he thinks that he does well? Because we can't find it.
Again, he's very popular personality-wise with a lot of the AEW fans and the Observer readers. They voted him Wrestler of the Year at one point.
Because they're all 8 years old. And when they come in the room, I'll be badass and I'll beat everybody up. How is it? How does it go?
I'll be on the Apex like Stallone in Cliffhanger. And then I'll fall off the Apex.
Well, I'm glad that he has a wonderful opinion about his work and his spot in the community.
All right, Jim, well, let's get a few more questions and get the hell out of here. Jim,
Wait a minute, hold on. You hear that, don't you?
What do you have, gas?
Wild card, bitches.
Watch your mouth.
I've got something for you here.
Uh-oh.
A surprise guest the program. Because I have done another trade with another individual. Thank you, Joe Moosoff, up there in where you are. I don't want to give you any clues. I'm up there and where you are because I don't want to give you any clues, but I have a guess the program. Are you ready to take the challenge of identifying the year and the location of this card after hearing the participants on it?
Yeah, of course. This is always fun.
All right. The opening contest. A guy whose first name is not recorded named Murhoff versus Mike Boyer. And at first I thought, wait a minute, because they're only giving first names on the lineup, but I read in the other place in the program, this was indeed Mike Boyette, but he was a young star at this time, had not taken the Boyette name yet, and his real name, he used it in Memphis in 1979 also briefly, was spelled Bowyer, Mike Boyer, in the first match against Murhoff. A bonus match, Big Luke versus Jack Daniels.
Okay.
The semi-wind-up, the Mighty Igor versus the Big K. A special attraction handicap match, the Crusher versus Larry Hennig and Harley Race. And in the main event, Billy Red Lions versus Dr. X.
Okay. I didn't expect it to go where it went after Murtaugh, or whoever you said it was, against Mike Boyer. But then you said Moose Cholak against the Mighty Igor?
No, I didn't. I said Mighty Igor versus the Big K.
The Big K, Stan Kowalski. Sorry to associate Moose Cholak with Stan Kowalski.
Well, either one would have been offended if
that's what I mean.
They're both dead.
What was the main event again? Billy Red Lions
versus Dr. X.
I'm gonna. What was this? The wind up?
Well, the semi wind
up
was Igor and Big K, but then the special attraction was the Crusher in a handicap match against Hennig and Race.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess 1968. It's either an AWA town or Chicago, which technically wasn't an AWA town. It was split between Dick the Bruiser, Wilbur Snyder, and Vern Gagne. It would either be just me guessing a random AWA town, and I don't know if that would have been a St. Paul or a big main event there. I'm going to go with Chicago 68.
Well, you talked yourself out of it. You almost had it. September 21, 1968, you bastard. St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, man.
You talked yourself out of it. This was not a Chicago card.
I should have known that it wasn't a Chicago card, but the Crusher kind of, I don't even know why that would have changed the way I thought.
Yeah, you would have gone to Milwaukee. See, I thought the Crusher and Hennig and Race is the one that gave it away, because the first three, and Billy Red Lions and Dr. X could have been the era you got, but it could have been anywhere. But
the problem is, in my head, I heard Moose Cholak for whatever reason that pushed me to Chicago.
Well, and then also, I thought you would be pushed to Milwaukee, because the whole program does not explain why that the Crusher is in a handicap match with both Hennig and Race, when Hennig and Race were about to win the tag team, either had lost it earlier in the year or were about to win it from Mitsu Arakawa and Mr. Moto. But they were a top tag team, obviously, of the era, so the handicap match had some gimmick to it that the program doesn't describe. But yes, Mike Boyer as a rookie. Stan the Big K Kowalski, when he was young, he would have had to have been only in his late 40s at that point. And Dr. X, for the folks who...
Yeah, that's how I knew 60. That's how I knew 68, by the way.
Well, yeah, because that was the thing, is that Dr. X was Dick Beyer, the Destroyer. But for whatever reason, when he went to the AWA, and he beat Vern for the belt, I think a month previous to this in St. Paul, and then dropped it back pretty quickly afterwards. But for whatever reason, Destroyer became Dr. X when he went to the AWA. And that, do we know why? Has anybody ever said why?
He said why, and I don't remember why.
That's what I was going to say. If he said why? Does anybody remember?
I'm sure Mike Tenay would know why. He was like the biggest Destroyer fan ever.
No, you know what? Was it a deal where they were either talking about doing a mask match or taking the mask off of him or something? He said, I'm not going to risk the Destroyer, because the Destroyer was so over in Japan. He didn't want to risk Destroyer getting bad publicity or press or whatever, or being unmasked, so he did something else. Something like that.
You know what? If that's the case, is that the first example of a wrestler worried about their booking in America, how it would affect them in Japan?
I don't know if it had been the first one, because by the late 60s, I think that was ingrained in everybody is that, you want to go to Japan, they're going to pay well. It's an experience, but, you've got to keep an eye on but at the same time, the Destroyer was over in California and Toronto and a variety of places in this country. I think he was protecting the Destroyer anywhere rather than just the Destroyer in Japan.
Well, one final question here, Jim, I think this week. This one was sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. We'll try to get through more emails next week here on the show. From Terry Tumbarello. Would Brad
You are completely just making these up now this week.
I'm not making them up. I mean, you could accuse these people of making them up. I don't know. But would Brad Armstrong have made a better horseman than Paul Roma?
Well, Paul Roma wasn't a real horseman anyway. Come on. Seriously. I'm not trying to get on tumbleweed there, but that was during the mid-90s WCW, fucking limbo where they were just trying anything. There wasn't even really a horseman group at that point that meant anything, and they make Paul Roma. No, the Horsemen ran from 1985 to 1988, and anybody who was in the group from that period of time can call themselves an ex-horseman, which would be Flair, Tully, Arn, Ole, Luger, Wyndham, and JJ. And that's where it ends, except for, just shit that didn't work years later. So Brad would not have made a good Four Horsemen because he wasn't part of their group. As we talked about earlier in the show, that's what made it, because they were hanging out together, all except for Ole. Ole was in it on reputation at the start because he was involved in the tag team.
Well, plus he was close with Flair, at least in the 70s.
Well, yes, but in all honesty, Ole was in that group because he was still involved in the tag team with Arn. He was on the closing period of his in-ring career, and he didn't go out and party with the guys, and he didn't fit the Horseman picture. But because it was Ole Anderson, he was a name. You would take him in any group. But then Wyndham fit better, Luger fit better. But Brad, he was a great babyface. I'm not saying he couldn't have been a heel, but he didn't fit the in-ring style or the out-of-the-ring style of the Horseman. Brad should have definitely, I think, been used better than what he was in a lot of places because of what a brilliant talent he was, but I don't see him as a horseman.
Who do you see? And I do think Paul Roma, unfortunately, gets a bad rap because he was really good. And he really broke out in Power and Glory with Hercules in 1990.
Okay, well,
it's just he wasn't the guy for that role. And that poisoned the well.
I wasn't saying Paul Roma didn't. I didn't say Paul Roma stunk. I said Paul Roma wasn't a real horseman, and the rest of them that they tried when they tried to reenact it or revamp it or whatever. No, that's not say he should be set on fire or shot into space on the fucking space shuttle. But no, he wasn't a horseman.
Jim, I have another, before we go, I said that was the last question.
You lied.
I lied, I apologize. Apparently Sports Illustrated working overtime, another article. This one has Kenny Omega quotes. If I'm being honest, the MVP of AEW hasn't been me. It's Jon Moxley.
Oh, for God's sake.
For AEW, John's been the one. He's been in almost every show.
Well, wait a minute. I asked earlier who's been telling this fucking clown that he's so good. Apparently this other fucking clown.
He's been at almost every show. He's bled at almost every show. There is no one higher on the blood-giving list. Maybe that's what makes this feud so interesting. It's someone with the notoriety from Japan against someone who was a top player from WWE. And John hasn't stopped working. I was injured, but now that I'm healed up, it's beautiful that we can restart the song and dance between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley.
We can restart the song and dance. So you got this guy over here, he's the fucking Bob Fosse of wrestling, and you got the other guy is the goddamn fucking
Gigi
Jeffrey
Allen
Dahmer,
versus
Jeffrey
Bob
Dahmer
Fosse.
of wrestling. He wants to drink everybody's blood and eat their bones, and the other guy wants to fucking dance with them and fucking have a tea party. What the?
We make a good combo.
I have no response to Kenny Olivier there and his comments.
Who would you say is the MVP of AEW since the beginning?
Since the very beginning?
Yeah, taking everything into account.
Well, Punk obviously wasn't there from the beginning. Punk came in, did business, got hurt, and got run off by the, jealous children.
But again, for that 1 year, record gates,
for that
record
1 year,
crowds, record ratings.
everything was great. Everything he did was positive and drew and performed. MJF has been a tremendous performer from the start of the thing till now. At the same point, before he really got the ability to say no, apparently, he had to do the song and dance thing with Jericho, and that drug him down quite a bit. Just that whole program, but still he's been tremendous. I'd like to say FTR, they've been consistently the best in-ring workers, but their booking has been so horrible. They've been a non-factor in drawing any money anywhere except against the Briscoes on other people's shows. Can you have none of the above as an MVP?
I guess. I mean, someone's going to vote for someone.
Well, but put in none of the above and see how many people vote for none of the above, because who, through the whole thing, has been there and has, say again?
Chris Jericho.
But I was about to say, who through the whole thing has been there and has performed at a high level and all of their shit has exceeded expectations? Now you take that name back, don't you?
I do. MJF.
He may be the closest one.
I mean, he's had clunkers, but in terms of the quality
usually
of
wasn't
his
fault.
No, but his matches have never been bad, and the quality of his work, even in some of the bad stuff, has been good since the beginning. Cody, man, it's almost like Cody's strongest stuff was before AEW started, in a sense, like before the official television show started, and then they found a way to run him off.
Yeah, well, and still, I think the best pro wrestling match, not modern style, but pro wrestling match that AEW ever had was Cody and Dustin, still to this day. So, but his best stuff was beforehand, because then, like you've said a million times, when you got Cody on that television show with the rest of the people that couldn't keep up, it didn't work. They didn't fit.
What about Jade Cargill for MVP? Or Britt Baker?
Oh, and not even because what? Exactly how many tickets has Jane Cargill sold to an AEW event, besides to her immediate family? Because what has she ever been advertised in that would, maybe I got to go to see just that? She comes out, she wins because it must be in her contract. She's never in programs. She's never booked in main event matches or in key things on pay-per-views. She's television programming that apparently Tony wants to keep her happy. So he never asked her to put anybody over. It means nothing now, though, because what the fuck?
Hey, Jim, one more question before we get out of here. This one was sent in on the Cult of Cornette Facebook group from Jeff Hood. Any memories of working at Notre Dame in Indiana? We did not get many shows up here.
Okay, short question. Short answer, no, I don't think I have.
All right, well, there's your question, Jeff.
Now, here's the thing. I would have to go through my WWF era books from, say, 95 to 99 to make sure, but I don't think I've ever been on a show there.
You know, we have so many questions from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. Let's try to really quick blow through several in under 2 minutes, all right?
Sure.
Have you been officially, this is from Adam Craven, have you been officially served on the Rockacon lawsuit?
No, I have not, but I'm waiting with bated breath with my napkin already tucked into my shirt.
This is from Jason Adams. What was worse for the wrestling business, Vince McMahon invading the territories or the internet and dirt sheets?
Vince McMahon and the internet, the dirt sheets were for if you want to use the term, newsletters, were for a specific audience that sought them out. It wasn't casual fans being slapped in the face with them and forced to read them. But the internet accomplished that. And then Vince disrupting the ecosystem of wrestling was the worst thing that happened to the industry as far as not just being exposed, but being ruined.
This one's from Isaac Gresser. Was wrestling broadcast on radio before television? If so, how was it presented differently for the radio crowd?
Yes, it was. And it was presented differently because they couldn't see it. What? How the fuck else? What? The announcer still said, well, Thez has a headlock on Strangler Lewis, but you just couldn't fucking see it.
All right, Jim, from Angel Flores, what are some of your favorite Twilight Zone episodes?
Time Enough at Last, To Serve Man. Oh my gosh. Obviously, It's a Good Life with Billy Mooney. So many of them, but and also the Howling Man is an underrated one, where the traveler lost in the mountains comes to the monastery and is given refuge there from the horrible weather, and then falls prey to the sob story of the man that's locked inside the cell, and he lets him loose and then realizes that he has indeed let the devil loose upon the world again. This, of course, was after, in the days after World War II, the monastery had locked the devil up and he couldn't perpetrate his evil anymore. But after he was let out, then this guy had to go on a fucking search all around the world to find and recapture the Howling Man.
Jim, Nathan Steele would like to know, ask Jim if he remembers the preacher praying that Jesus would stone cold stunner the devil during the invocation at Paul Lee's Wrestle Jam several years back. Any other real Nature Boy Paul Lee stories would be great as well.
Well, when you started that at first, I was like, that's a whole lot of words I recognize, but what the fuck are you saying? And then when you said Paul Lee, I thought you meant Paul Lee Dangerously, but no, Paul Lee, Nature Boy Paul Lee. Paul Lee was a guy from Georgia that actually did some jobs in the early days of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, some of my TVs, and he has been running his hometown intermittently for the past several years. I've been down there to one of his shows, and he has somewhat of a following down there. He gained like 50 pounds of muscle. He was a little skinny thing when he did jobs for me, and then last time I saw him, he was fucking... he looked enormous. So, but what was the question now?
The question was, ask Jim if he remembers the preacher praying that Jesus would stone cold stunner the devil during the invocation at Paul Lee's Wrestle Jam several years back.
Okay, well, I went to one of the shows, and I know that after the national anthem, they started doing some kind of praying, and I was out at the gimmick table, and I didn't want people to think that I was in favor of or lending my approval to having a prayer out in public before a wrestling show, so I didn't listen to it and went in the back.
Jim, you are not a religious man, but if you're going with the idea that Jesus Christ needs to deliver a finishing move on the devil, that would be the ultimate finisher, would you go with the Stone Cold Stunner?
I think I'd have to go with the crucifix, wouldn't you?
See, that's awful. I set you up perfectly, and it's horrible.
It worked on him. I would think he would have learned it and learned a new hold and used it on others.
Who was the last guy to win a big match with the crucifix?
Oh, God. Well, a crucifix can also, that's another name for a backslide. And those are still fairly common.
Well, it's a specific kind of...
The regular crucifix is the arm up over the arm and the leg up over the leg, and you go sideways. But there's still, I've heard the backslide termed crucifix, so you never know.
What do you think?
It's a variation.
What do you think of Kerry Von Erich winning the world title with a backslide?
If I was Flair, I'd rather take the backslide and 1, 2, 3 than the fucking claw and have to fucking just pass out from a guy squeezing my head.
Jim, our final question from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group from Derek Everhart.
Oh, come on now. Hey, Derek.
Oh, my God, that is fun. That is funny considering the question. What do you think
I
of
don't care if you are Everhard. I still don't like you.
Well, it's Everhart, but his question was, what do you think of Jericho saying Hogan was a better worker than Flair?
When did he say that?
I will find the quote right now. Hold on. Give your initial thoughts, please.
Well, my initial thoughts are Jericho must think that he lives close to Hogan and Flair lives hundreds of miles away, so he wants to be nicer to Hogan. I don't fucking know. Hulk Hogan was a good worker athletically, physically. He was a great worker psychologically, but nobody can compare. And you can say what you want about who was your favorite, and we know that Hogan drew more money because he was in the bigger company. But can anybody ever say that Hulk Hogan was better inside the ring as a performer than Ric Flair with a straight face? That's insane.
As a performer is different than as a wrestler, as a worker.
It depends on, as I just said, what kind of working. But just to make a blanket statement that Hogan was a better worker than Flair, and the connotation that would give, he's trying to suck up to Hogan for some reason, Jericho is. I'm just not sure what.
Well, I have an article here. It says that apparently on his show, he was doing a watch-along of I guess just the WWF watch-along, old stuff, with Brian Alvarez and Vincent Verhey from the Figure 4 website. And here's what Jericho said about Hogan and Flair. Quote, I will say to this day, and people will bag, here's a clickbait. Hogan is a better worker than Flair. For me, I always had amazing matches with Hogan because he knew exactly who he was as a babyface, as a heel, whatever. He was so great. He knew his audience. He didn't do anything he didn't have to do. It was one of my favorite times of my career. Here's another thing about Hogan.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Let me interject. So what he's saying is, yeah, Hogan was easy. He didn't want to take any bumps. He didn't want to give any bumps. He didn't want to go too fast. He didn't want to work too hard. And he didn't want to chop me.
Here's another great thing about Hogan. Like, you don't even think about it.
Boy.
But the dude had like a super receding hairline. But no one ever really noticed it back then.
What?
we all did, but you
noticed it. Nobody. Yeah, I mean, you may have been only like 8 or 10 years old, but no, everybody noticed it even then. That with the jokes about Hogan's hair have been around almost as long as Jericho.
Well, maybe explain what Jericho does with his hair, but no one ever really noticed it back then. We all did, but you didn't.
No, the fans talked about it.
So did the heels every now and then.
Yeah.
But no one ever really noticed. It's just Hogan, right? Like, it's weird. He's like America's hero with no hair now. That would never go. He'd put a toupee on or something. So there are the thoughts of Chris Jericho, who, nice crossover event with the Observer website on his show.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, wait a minute, is that some kind of conflict of interest if they're covering AEW as journalists with an impartial view, but they got one of their stars on the program? One would think if Uncle Dave and his little cousin Brian weren't so trustworthy, one would think that there's something going on there that would make them biased toward one company or the other. But we can't say that because they're very trustworthy.
To look at this with some merit before we wrap things up, the idea that Hogan is as good, let's just go with as good a worker as Flair. Can you make the argument that because it's a different style of wrestling altogether, that it may be true? I mean, to what Jericho's actually saying here, Hogan did exactly what Hogan should. Like, Hogan shouldn't have been out there working like Eddie Guerrero or something, right?
Right.
Flair did what Flair should do. It was perfect for Ric Flair.
He worked like Ric Flair.
Exactly. So, I mean, in a sense, obviously, Hogan wasn't working Ric Flair-style matches. Very few were, especially in the 80s. It's influenced everything since. But to that point, can you argue that Hogan, in terms of being perfect as Hulk Hogan in the ring, doing everything he needs to do, was as good a worker?
You know, I've described Gunther like that he does everything that Gunther should do. He works like himself, but his shit also looks good. Hogan was a good psychologist, great psychologist. He could get the people up and down because he had honestly, the benefit of having the big Vince's promotional machine behind him. But when he got in the ring, he had to sell. He had to do the promos, got the people with him. He had to make the comeback and wag the finger. That was all great, but his stuff looked like shit. And it was literally the same thing 10 years earlier as when Stone Cold was so over and his promos were great and he looked like $1 million and his matches were incredible. But when he'd stomp the shit out of you in the corner, they looked like shit. But people didn't see it because it was Austin and he was over. Hogan, almost everything he did in the WWF looked like shit in the matches. You can find his stuff in Japan or some of his early stuff in the AWA where he's having good matches, but he had given that up by then. Vince didn't want him to get hurt and he didn't want to get hurt. And on those hard rings, but it was 8 minutes and back rake and bad looking punches. He did everything right, but the shit that he was doing looked like shit, which is why I can say he might have been a better psychologist. He was even more over. Might have been at some points a better promo, but he wasn't a better worker than Ric Flair.
All right, well, that's the final word, and I guess it's fitting that the final question about Chris Jericho was from a Derek, of all things.
Hey, fuck you, Derek.
Let's get one song and get out of here. It won't be this one. I'll just read this description. Here's a song submission, but it's not funny. It's a depressing Elliott Smith-sounding thing about how much I hate the Young Bucks. It's called West Coast Bummer LTD. Unless there's some sort of case where you guys need a downer, it'll just grind the podcast to a sad halt. So I completely understand if you don't use it.
So is that the first time that somebody has sent us a song and said, but really, you don't want to play this because it's fucking sad?
Well, let's hear how sad it. Now I'm intrigued. Here's a song from Billy Yost, a.k.a. the Corny Crows theme guy. And it says the browser can't play this. You sent it in a format that I can't play on this right now, Billy. So next time. All right, and with that, the drive-thru is closed. Here's my deal. You know, the other one's better. This one, the pentatonic one is better. And you know what I did get? Hold on, where is this thing? I got so excited about this. I hope the kids didn't steal it yet.
Oh my God! What the hell have you done?
It's an Acme siren.
Oh, Jesus. Give somebody a warning before you do that. That went right through me.
All right, well, I was trying to conjure up some Bob Dylan-like spirits here. Of course, the drive-thru will return next week wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and the Jim Cornette Experience this coming Monday, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Go through the archives today, patreon.com/Cornette. For $5 a month, you get access to the archive going back to 2013, patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Subscribe today. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections, all with the very popular Travis Heckle artwork, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com or available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the wrestling news every day, your free daily wrestling newscast every morning. Get it directly from thewrestlingnews.com or look for Arcadian Vanguard's The Wrestling News wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. What's going on, Jim?
They know what to do.
At JimCornette.com. The drive-thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until the Jim Cornette Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!